Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a bunch of new stories for you. Let's start right away with the first one. It is titled, My Daughter Abandoned Her Autistic Son 11 Years Ago. I Raised Him Alone. At 16, he built a $3.2 million app. Then she came back with a lawyer claiming his money. I panicked. Our lawyer said we might lose. But my grandson calmly whispered, just let her talk. My daughter left her 5-year-old autistic son at my door and never came back. That was 11 years ago. I raised Ethan myself. Everyone said he'd never succeed. Too different. Too difficult. They were wrong. By 16, he'd built a software worth $3.2 million. Then the news covered his story. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang. Rachel, my daughter, standing there with a lawyer and documents claiming she'd been involved the whole time. Custody papers, financial records, visit logs, all lies, but they looked real. Our lawyer reviewed them and said without proof they're forged, we might lose. I panicked. Ethan didn't. He leaned over and whispered, let her talk. I stared at him. We were about to lose everything and he wanted her to keep lying, but he just sat there calm watching and I had no idea what he was about to do. My name is Vivian. I am 68 years old and this is my story. Rachel showed up on a Friday in November 2010 with Ethan and one backpack. Just for the weekend, Mom, she said at my front door. I need a break, please. Ethan stood beside her, 5 years old, staring at the porch floor. He rocked back and forth, heel to toe. His hands covered his ears even though we weren't making noise. Rachel, what's I'll call you Sunday? She was already turning away, walking fast toward her car. She didn't hug Ethan, didn't kiss him goodbye, just left. I watched her tail lights disappear down the street. Ethan kept rocking. I'd taught elementary school for 35 years, had a few autistic students mainstreamed into my class over the decades, always with aides and specialists handling the hard parts. But standing there with my grandson, I realized I knew almost nothing about actually living with it. Hey, Ethan, I said softly. Want to come inside? He didn't look at me, didn't move, just rocked. I picked up his backpack. It was light, too light for a weekend stay. I opened the door wider, waited. After a minute, Ethan walked past me into the house, still covering his ears. The refrigerator hummed. He flinched. The heater clicked on. He pressed his hands tighter to his head. I closed the door as quietly as I could. He was already in the living room, crouched in the corner by the bookshelf. Are you hungry? I asked. Nothing. Thirsty? He rocked faster. I went to the kitchen, poured water in a yellow plastic cup I kept for when he visited. Those visits were rare, maybe twice a year, always short. I brought the cup to him, set it on the floor an arm's length away. He stopped rocking, looked at the cup, then went back to rocking. That first night was worse. I made chicken nuggets and fries for dinner because Rachel once told me that's what he ate. Ethan took one look at the plate and turned away. I tried pasta. No, I tried a sandwich. He pushed it across the table. What do you want to eat? I asked. He hummed a low sound in his throat and stared at the wall. I gave him crackers. He ate 3. Bedtime was a disaster. I tried to help him brush his teeth and he screamed. Not crying, screaming like I was hurting him. I stepped back and he stopped, but he was shaking. Okay, I said. Okay, you can skip it tonight. I put him in the guest room, tucked the blanket around him the way I thought kids liked. He threw it off. I tried again. He screamed. I left the blanket at the foot of the bed and backed out of the room. He didn't sleep. I could hear him humming all night, that same low sound over and over. I didn't sleep either. Saturday morning, I called Rachel. No answer. Left a message. Rachel, honey, call me back. I need to know what Ethan eats, what his routines are. She didn't call. I called again Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Nothing. 1 week became 2. I took Ethan to the pediatrician. The doctor confirmed what I already suspected. He's autistic. Mrs. Cooper, has anyone talked to you about getting him evaluated? His mother was supposed to handle that. The doctor nodded slowly. Well, you're handling it now. I enrolled him in therapy. Speech, occupational, behavioral. I learned he needed the same breakfast every single day. Scrambled eggs, toast cut, corner to corner, nothing touching on the plate. I learned the route to therapy had to be exactly the same or he'd scream in the car. I learned not to touch him unless he initiated it. I got good at watching instead of doing. 2 weeks after Ethan arrived, I found him in the living room at dawn. He was on the floor with a bin of toy cars I'd bought him, lining them up in a perfect row, but it wasn't random. He'd arranged them by color, but in a way I couldn't understand at first. I sat on the couch and watched. Red car, then one that was slightly more orange, then one more orange than the last, then yellow, green, on and on. This gradient so subtle I had to squint to see the differences. He'd organized them by shade perfectly. "That's amazing, Ethan." I said. He didn't look at me, but he kept arranging. December came. Rachel still hadn't called. I tried a different approach with Ethan. I stopped trying to get him to look at me, stopped pushing him to talk. I just made sure everything was the same every single day. Same breakfast, same time, same shows on TV, same bedtime routine that he'd finally tolerated, which was just me saying good night from the doorway. He calmed down, not happy, but less frantic. He'd sit in the living room with me while I read. He'd eat meals without pushing the plate away. On Christmas Eve, I made sugar cookies. Ethan didn't help, but he sat at the table and watched me cut shapes. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter. The phone rang. I grabbed it, hoping. "Rachel." "Mom." Her voice was flat. "Tired." "Rachel." "Thank God. When are you coming to get him?" "He needs you." "I need to know." "I can't do this anymore, Mom." I stopped moving. "What?" "He's yours." "I tried. I really tried, but I can't." Her voice cracked. "I just can't." "Rachel, wait." The line went dead. I called back. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I stood there in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, the cookies burning in the oven, smoke starting to curl up. I turned off the oven, pulled out the tray. The cookies were black. I sat down on the floor, just sat there with my back against the cabinet. Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked at me for a long moment, longer than he'd ever looked at me before. Then he walked to the counter, picked up the yellow cup I'd given him that first day, and brought it to me. He set it on the floor beside me. I looked at the cup, looked at him. He went back to the living room. I cried sitting there on the kitchen floor with a burnt cookie sheet and a yellow plastic cup. The years after that blurred together. I kept everything exactly the same for Ethan. Same breakfast every morning, eggs and toast, same route everywhere we went. Same bedtime, same routine, same everything. When I kept it consistent, he was okay. Not happy, maybe, but okay. When he turned 6, he became obsessed with a set of magnetic letters I'd bought him. He'd arranged them on the refrigerator for hours. Not words, patterns, groups, sequences I couldn't understand. Then he started drawing symbols in little notebooks from the dollar store. Circles, lines, tick marks, tracking something only he understood. At therapy, I asked about it. "He makes these marks everywhere. Should I be worried?" The therapist, a patient woman named Dr. Lin, shook her head. "He's tracking his world. It helps him feel secure. Let him do it." So, I did. He filled notebook after notebook with his symbols and marks. By the time he turned 7, the symbols became letters. Then short words, egg, toast, school, home, simple things, but written in neat block letters. At 8, he was writing full sentences, times, what he ate, where we went, what happened. He learned to make eye contact, sometimes, little flickers. He learned to tolerate the grocery store if we went at the same time every week. He learned that I wasn't going to leave, wasn't going to change things without warning. One morning in spring when he was 8, I was making breakfast. Eggs, toast, same as always. Ethan sat at the table with his notebook, writing something. "Why did Mom leave?" I nearly dropped the spatula. I turned around. Ethan was looking at his notebook, not at me, but he'd spoken. 3 years of mostly silence, then single words, and now this, a full sentence, a question. I sat down across from him. She said she couldn't handle it. He nodded once, wrote something in his notebook, went back to staring at the page. I got up, finished making breakfast, put his plate in front of him. Then I went to the bathroom and cried where he couldn't hear me. He'd spoken. He'd asked the question I didn't know how to answer. But I told him the truth. That's all I could do. The truth. And eggs and toast every morning in the same yellow cup. That's what I had to give him. It would have to be enough. A year after Ethan first spoke to me, the school called with a problem. It was September 2014. Ethan was 9, starting 4th grade. I thought we'd moved past the hardest parts. He was talking in full sentences now, eating in the cafeteria without meltdowns, even raising his hand in class sometimes. Progress. Then, Principal Andrews wanted to move him. "Mrs. Cooper, we need to discuss Ethan's placement," he said over the phone. New teacher this year, Mrs. Brennan, who'd seemed kind at orientation. I'd been hopeful. What's the problem? I asked. Ethan would be better served in our special needs classroom. The other students are moving at a different pace. I gripped the phone. Ethan keeps up with the work. It's not about academics. It's about behavior. He doesn't participate in group activities. He won't make eye contact during circle time. Yesterday he covered his ears during music class because it's loud. He has sensory issues. Mrs. Cooper, we have a program designed for children like Ethan. It would be less stressful for everyone. Less stressful for the teacher. He meant I want an IEP meeting. I said we can arrange that. But this week, silence. Then I'll have my secretary call you. I spent 3 days preparing, printed every report card, every therapy progress note, every piece of documentation I'd kept in folders. Ethan's reading was above grade level. His math was 2 years ahead. His handwriting was careful and neat, every letter perfectly formed. The problem wasn't that he couldn't learn. The problem was that he learned differently. The meeting was on a Friday afternoon conference room at the school. 2 bright fluorescent lights humming. Principal Andrews sat at the head of the table. Mrs. Brennan next to him, school psychologist, special education coordinator, all of them with folders. I had one folder, but it was thick. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Cooper. Principal Andrews said, we want what's best for Ethan. So do I. Mrs. Brennan spoke first. Soft voice, sympathetic smile. Ethan is a sweet boy, but he struggles socially. He doesn't interact with peers. During group work, he sits alone. He refuses to participate. Does he do the work? I asked. She hesitated. Yes, but education isn't just about worksheets. It's about learning to work with others to communicate. He's autistic. Communication is harder for him, but he's trying. The special education coordinator, a woman named Ms. Pierce, leaned forward. Our resource room offers a smaller setting, fewer distractions. Students who understand his challenges. Students who can't keep up academically. I said that's not Ethan. Principal Andrews used that principal voice, the one I recognized from my own decades in classrooms. Reasonable, patient, condescending. We understand you want Ethan in a mainstream classroom, but we have to consider the needs of all students. You're telling me Ethan is disruptive, I said. Not disruptive exactly. Then what's the problem? Miss Pierce opened her folder. Ethan's social skills assessment shows significant delays. His IQ testing was inconclusive. He refused to finish several sections. Because they were timed, and that made him anxious. His therapist documented that, which brings us back to our point. Principal Andrews said, Ethan needs support we can't provide in a regular classroom. I opened my folder, pulled out the first document. This is Ethan's reading comprehension test from last month. 97% 7th grade level. Next document, math assessment, 100% 5th grade material. I kept pulling papers, stacked them in front of Principal Andrews. These are therapy notes showing his progress in speech, in emotional regulation, in sensory tolerance. He's come further in 4 years than anyone predicted, not because he's in a special room with low expectations, because people believed he could do more. Mrs. Brennan looked uncomfortable. It's not about expectations. Yes, it is. You want him somewhere else because he makes you uncomfortable. Because he doesn't perform normal the way you want normal to look. The room went quiet. Principal Andrews cleared his throat. Mrs. Cooper, I understand you're frustrated. Under AITA, Ethan has the right to the least restrictive environment. That means mainstream classroom with appropriate supports, not segregation because he's different. I shouldn't have used that word segregation, but I was tired of being polite. We're not suggesting segregation, Miss Pierce said quickly. Just a more appropriate setting. Then provide the supports in his current classroom, noise-canceling headphones for music, extra time for transitions, a quiet space if he gets overwhelmed. That's accommodation, not removal. They looked at each other. Principal Andrews sighed. We LL draft an IEP with those accommodations, he said finally. But if Ethan continues to struggle, he won't. I didn't actually know that, but I knew giving up on him wasn't the answer. That evening, I spread all the meeting notes across the kitchen table, started organizing them into a 3-ring binder. Color-coded tabs for medical, educational, therapy, legal. My hands knew this work from years in classrooms. Ethan came in from the living room. He'd been watching his show, the same episode he watched every Friday. His yellow cup sat on the counter where he always left it. He stood watching me work. What are you doing? He asked. His speech had grown stronger over the year, more fluid, making sure the school can't forget what you can do. He moved closer, looked at the papers. Can I help? I glanced at him. Sure. We worked together for an hour. I showed him how I was organizing everything. He studied my system, then pointed to the therapy tab. These should be sorted by date, then by type. Speech separate from occupational, separate from behavioral. I looked at where he was pointing. He was right. That made more sense. Show me, I said. He rearranged the entire section in 10 minutes, created a system I wouldn't have thought of, logical and clean and perfect. I watched him work, his hands moving fast, completely focused. He understood organization on a level I'd never reach. Pattern and structure and order. It came naturally to him the way breathing came to other people. That's really good, Ethan, I said when he finished. He nodded. Didn't smile, but I could tell he was pleased. The next year, when Ethan turned 10, his speech therapist suggested a tablet for communication support, something to type on when speaking felt too hard. I saved up and bought him one for his birthday. He had it figured out in a day. Within a week, he downloaded a scanning app, started photographing every page of his notebooks, creating digital copies. I watched him work, methodical and focused, preserving everything he'd ever written. Why are you doing that? I asked. So I don't lose it, he said, not looking up from the screen. At therapy group sessions for parents, the other mothers would ask me questions during coffee time. How did I get Ethan to cooperate? What was my secret? How did I handle the meltdowns? I don't handle him, I said. I listened to him. One woman, Linda, whose son was 7 and nonverbal, shook her head. But how do you stay so patient? I thought about that. I guess I stopped trying to make him be someone else. I just try to understand who he is. She looked at me like I'd said something profound, but it wasn't profound. It was just the only thing that worked. Ethan started noticing patterns everywhere. That year, we'd be driving and he'd say, "The traffic light on 4th Street is mistimed. It stays red 45 seconds longer than the others." I had no idea if that was true. At the grocery store, he'd look at the receipt and point out a pricing error. The apples were marked wrong, 3 cents higher than the shelf tag. He was right every time. Once at a parent-teacher conference that fall, Principal Andrews smiled at me while explaining Ethan's progress, but his eyes stayed flat, cold. In the car, Ethan said, "He doesn't like me." What? No, honey. He was being nice. His face moved wrong. The smile didn't match. I glanced at Ethan. He was staring out the window. Expression blank. What do you mean? When people really smile, the muscles around their eyes contract. His didn't. He was pretending. I drove in silence. Ethan was 10 years old and he could read faces better than I could. By the time he turned 11 and started 5th grade, I thought we'd found our rhythm. Then Mrs. Hang called me at work one afternoon. "Mrs. Cooper, Ethan disrupted class today." My stomach dropped. What happened? I was teaching long division. Ethan stood up and corrected me in front of everyone. Was he right? Pause. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Was he right? Yes. But then he was helping. "Mrs. Cooper, he embarrassed me. He needs to understand there's a time and place. He's 11. He sees a mistake. He corrects it. That's how his brain works." Another parent conference. Another stack of paperwork. This time they wanted to label him oppositional defiant. I brought 6 months of therapy notes. Dr. Lynn's assessments showing Ethan wasn't defiant. He was direct, factual. He didn't understand social hierarchies that said adults were always right even when they were wrong. "He's not being disrespectful," I explained to the school psychologist. "He's being honest. There's a difference." They agreed to drop it. Barely. That night, Ethan asked me a question while we ate dinner. Why do they want me to be different? I set down my fork. What do you mean? The teachers, the other kids, everyone wants me to act like I'm not me. I didn't have a good answer. Not really, because they're scared of people who see more than they do, I said finally. He thought about that, nodded once, went back to eating. A few weeks later, he asked if I had his birth certificate. Why do you need that? I asked. I want to see it. I found it in my file cabinet. He studied it for a long time, then asked for his school enrollment papers, his social security card, anything with his name on it. Are you okay? I asked. Is this about your mom? I just want to see everything. Make sure it's all there. I assumed he was processing what had happened. Trying to understand why Rachel left, what his life looked like on paper. It made sense for a kid who organized the world in categories and files. I helped him scan everything into his tablet. Birth records, medical history, every legal document I had in the filing cabinet. He saved them all carefully, backed them up, created folders with labels I didn't quite understand. What are you building? I asked once. A system, he said, so nothing gets lost. I kissed the top of his head. Okay, buddy. Whatever helps. I thought he was coping with his past. I had no idea he was preparing for his future. That future started taking shape this summer. Ethan turned 12. He'd been scanning documents for months by then, organizing everything into his tablet with a focus I'd learned not to interrupt. But in June 2017, he discovered something new. Coding. I found him at the kitchen table one afternoon with my old laptop open, staring at a screen full of text that looked like gibberish to me. Lines of words and symbols and brackets. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Learning Python." He didn't look up. "What's Python?" "A programming language." "I'm following a tutorial." I leaned over his shoulder. The screen showed instructions about variables and functions and loops. None of it made sense to me. "Is this for school?" "No, I just want to learn it." I left him alone. That's what worked with Ethan. Let him follow what interested him. He spent the entire summer on that laptop. While other kids were at baseball camp or the pool, Ethan was coding. I'd bring him lunch and he'd eat without looking away from the screen. His yellow cup sat beside the laptop, half full of water he'd forget to drink. By August, he was showing me things he'd made. Little programs that did tasks I didn't understand. "This one sorts files by date," he explained. "This one finds duplicates. This one checks if a file has been modified." "That's really impressive, Ethan." He nodded, kept typing. In September, I used the last of my savings to buy him a better computer. A real one, not my hand-me-down laptop that took 5 minutes to start up. He'd earned it. The man at the electronics store asked what Ethan would use it for. "Programming." Ethan said, "How old are you?" 12. The man smiled. "That's a good age to start. You'll go far." Ethan didn't respond. Just waited for me to pay. At home, he set up the new computer in his room. I made him promise to still come out for meals and to sleep at reasonable hours. He agreed, but I could tell his mind was already back in that world of code I couldn't enter. One evening in October, he called me to his room. "I want to show you something." I sat on the edge of his bed. He pulled up a program on his screen. "What is it?" "Watch." He opened a document, a simple text file with a few sentences. Then he ran his program. Numbers appeared on the screen. Long strings of them. "That's the document signature, like a fingerprint." "Okay," I said. Not really understanding. He opened the document again, changed one word, saved it, ran the program again. Different numbers appeared. "See, the signature changed. That means the document was altered. So you can tell if someone edits something." "Yes." And when and how many times he looked at me, actually made eye contact for a moment. So things stay true. I thought about all those school meetings, all those times administrators had said one thing, and then claimed later they'd said something else. All the times I'd wished I had proof. "That's brilliant, Ethan." He turned back to his screen. "It's just pattern recognition. Digital instead of physical. Just pattern recognition." As if that wasn't everything. The next year when he was 13, the project expanded. "I want to digitize all your binders," he said one morning at breakfast. "The school meeting notes, all of it." I looked at him over my coffee. "That's a lot of scanning. We already did the legal stuff." "I know, but I want everything in the system." "What system?" "The one I'm building. So nothing gets lost or changed." I thought about it. Those binders held years of fights, years of advocacy, years of proof that Ethan wasn't what people assumed he was. "Okay," I said, "but you're doing the scanning." My back can't handle that many hours hunched over. We spent weeks on it. I'd pull out binders and Ethan would scan page after page. AITA meeting notes from 2014. Therapy assessments from 2012. Report cards, progress notes, incident reports, every piece of paper that told Ethan's story. He didn't just scan them. He did something to each file on his computer, adding layers of information I couldn't see. "What are you adding?" I asked once. "Timestamps, verification codes, hash values." He paused. "Each document connects to the ones before and after it like a chain. If someone tries to change one link, the whole chain breaks. Why would someone change them?" He looked at me. "Why did Principal Andrews try to move me when I was 9? Fair point." "So, this protects the truth," I said. "Yes." I watched him work. This kid who'd been nonverbal 7 years ago, who'd screamed at the sound of the vacuum cleaner, who couldn't look anyone in the eye. Now, he was building something I could barely comprehend, something powerful. "I'm proud of you," I said. He nodded once, kept scanning. Our relationship had changed by then. We didn't need a lot of words. I'd say something, he'd nod. He'd show me something on his computer. I'd tell him it was good. We had dinner together every night. Same time, same seats. His yellow cup always to the right of his plate. Comfortable. That's what it was. Comfortable silence with someone who understood you didn't need to fill every quiet moment with noise. He turned 14 in November 2018. One afternoon, he asked if I'd kept anything from when he first came to live with me. Like what? Receipts, calendars, bank statements, anything from 2010 or 2011? I frowned. Why would you want that? I just want to see it. I led him to the garage, showed him the boxes I'd never thrown away because I'm not a throwaway kind of person. Old tax records, utility bills, bank statements going back a decade, calendars where I'd written appointments and errands in cramped handwriting. You kept all this? He asked. I taught elementary school. We keep everything. He started going through the boxes, pulled out my 2010 calendar, opened it to November, ran his finger down the dates. Why do you need this? I asked. I need to know what really happened, not what people say happened. What actually happened? I sat down on an overturned crate. This is about your mom. He didn't answer right away. Just kept looking at the calendar at my handwriting marking the day Rachel brought him. The days after when I'd written try chicken nuggets and call Rachel and doctor appointment. I need to know the timeline, he said finally. When things happened, what was real? My chest tightened. He was processing it. The abandonment, the years without her, the questions he'd never gotten answers to. We can scan all of it, I said. Whatever you need. We brought the boxes inside, spent the next month scanning grocery receipts, bank statements showing I'd never gotten money from Rachel. Phone bills proving she'd never called. Calendars documenting our routine, our life, every ordinary day that proved she'd been gone. I thought he was building a timeline of his childhood, understanding his past through documentation and proof. Why grocery receipts? I asked once, watching him scan a faded slip from 2011. They have dates. They show where we were, what we bought. They're evidence. Evidence of what? Of what happened, of what was real. I didn't push. If he needed this to heal, I'd help him. He started staying up later that year. I'd go to bed at 10 o'clock and hear the click of his keyboard through the wall. At midnight, I'd get up, make him a sandwich, or cut up an apple, leave it on his desk without saying anything. Thanks, he'd murmur, not looking away from his screen. Some nights, I'd wake at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and see light under his door. Ethan, you need to sleep, I'd say. Almost done. He was never almost done. One night in February, I brought him tea at 1 o'clock in the morning. His room was cold. 3 monitors now, all showing different screens of code and documents and data. What are you making? I asked. He paused, turned to look at me. Something that will help people know what's real and what's fake. What actually happened versus what someone claims happened. That's really important to you. Yes. Because of your mom. He thought about that because people lie and sometimes you need proof. I kissed the top of his head. His hair needed cutting. Don't stay up all night, I said. I won't. He did anyway. I'd find him asleep at his desk some mornings, head on his arms, monitors still glowing. I'd put a blanket over him and make breakfast. He'd wake up an hour later and come to the kitchen like nothing had happened. I was proud of him. Proud of his dedication, his intelligence, his drive to create something meaningful. I just didn't understand what it was really for. I thought he was healing from the past. I didn't know he was building armor for the future. I'd find him asleep at his desk some mornings, head on his arms, monitors still glowing. I'd put a blanket over him and make breakfast. He'd wake up an hour later and come to the kitchen like nothing had happened. I was proud of him, proud of his dedication, his intelligence, his drive to create something meaningful. He'd ask me sometimes to test his programs, click this button, tell him if the colors looked right, if the words made sense. I didn't understand what any of it did, but I could tell him if it looked finished. Does it work? I'd asked. Yes. Then what are you still working on? Making it better. Always better. Always more accurate. Always one more test, one more verification, one more way to prove what was real and what wasn't. I thought it was just a project, something impressive he'd put on college applications someday. I had no idea what he was really building. What he was building turned out to be something people would pay millions for. Ethan was 15 when he finished it. Spring 2020, middle of the pandemic. The world locked down and everyone suddenly living online. Ethan barely noticed the difference. He'd been living in his room with his computers for years already. I want to show you something, he said one afternoon in May. I followed him to his room. 3 monitors all showing different screens. He pulled up a program with a clean, simple interface. Nothing fancy, just boxes and buttons and text. This is it, he said. The verification system. What does it do? He clicked through screens showing me features I only half understood. It analyzes documents, checks if they've been altered, when they were created, if the signatures match other known samples. It catches forgeries. I watched the program run through a sample document. Numbers appeared, graphs, analysis results. So if someone fakes a document, this catches it. Yes, the metadata, the digital fingerprints, the patterns, it sees what people can't. That's incredible, Ethan. He nodded. I'm going to sell it to who? Security companies, fraud prevention. Anyone who needs to verify documents are real. He said it so matter-of-factly. Like it was obvious. My 15-year-old son was going to sell software to companies. Do you know how to do that? I asked. I've been researching. Of course, he had. He started reaching out to companies that month. Sent emails with professional language. I helped him polish, though his direct way of writing was clearer than most business communication I'd seen. The first sale came in June. A small security firm bought a license for $20,000. I stared at the number on the screen when Ethan showed me. $20,000. It's less than it should be, he said. But it's a proof of concept. Now I have a client. He was right. Once word got out that his system worked, other companies wanted demos. Ethan took conference calls in his room. That same calm voice he used with me, explaining technical concepts without dumbing them down. I'd listen from the hallway. Sometimes he'd say things like, the algorithm compares hash values across multiple verification layers. And somehow the business people on the other end understood him or pretended to. He turned 16 in November 2020. By January 2021, he had 6 more clients and enough money in his account to pay for college twice over. Then the big offers started coming. Tech companies wanted exclusive rights. Corporate fraud prevention firms wanted to license it for their entire operations. The numbers jumped from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions. I need help. Ethan said in February, I don't know how to evaluate these contracts. I found a business lawyer through a colleague, James Nakamura, specialized in intellectual property and software licensing. He met with us on a Saturday morning at our kitchen table, spread out 3 different contract offers. These are all substantial, he said, looking at Ethan. You built something valuable. Ethan nodded. Which one is best? James walked him through the options. Licensing deals that would pay over time, acquisition offers that would buy the software outright. Ethan listened, asked specific questions about terms and conditions and rights. I want to sell it completely, Ethan said finally. I don't want to manage licensing or support or updates. Just sell it and be done. James looked surprised. You're sure? Licensing could pay more long term. There's a non-compete clause in the acquisition, Ethan said. If I sell it, I can't make competing verification software for 5 years. That's standard, James said. Does that bother you? No, I'm done with this kind of software. I glanced at him. He said it so definitely, like he'd already planned what came next. He sold it in March for $3.2 million. $3.2 million. I couldn't process that number. I'd worked 35 years as a teacher and made maybe half that total before taxes. The local news heard about it somehow. Wanted to do a story about the local autistic teen who'd created revolutionary security software. I didn't want them in our house. Didn't want them turning Ethan into inspiration material, but he said yes. The reporter, a young woman named Kate, came on a Thursday afternoon. She sat up in our living room, asked if she could film Ethan at his computer. Can you explain what your software does? She asked. It verifies document authenticity through pattern recognition and metadata analysis, Ethan said, looking at the camera the way he'd look at anyone. Direct. It catches forgeries that people miss. What made you want to create this? I tensed. But Ethan answered simply. I wanted to know what was real. People lie. Documents don't if you know how to read them correctly. Kate smiled. That's very insightful. Do you have plans for what you'll do with the money? Not yet. She tried a few more questions, but Ethan's answers were short, factual, not the emotional human interest story she wanted. After 20 minutes, she thanked us and left. The segment aired on Friday Evening News. Local teen creates revolutionary security software. They used maybe 2 minutes of the interview, added dramatic music, showed Ethan at his computer looking focused and brilliant. I watched it with him. How do you feel? I asked when it ended. Fine. But I noticed something in the days after. He wasn't celebrating. Wasn't excited about the money or the attention or what came next. He was just waiting, watching. I'd catch him staring out the window sometimes or sitting at the kitchen table with his yellow cup, not drinking, just holding it. You okay? I'd asked. Yeah, but he wasn't. Something had shifted. Some tension I couldn't name. 2 weeks after the news story aired, the doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ethan was in his room. I opened the door and there they were. A woman in a gray suit, expensive looking, hair perfect. A man beside her in a dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase. The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Mom." My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. "Rachel." She looked older, 11 years older. Lines around her mouth, tension in her jaw, but it was her. "Ethan," she said, looking past me into the house. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My body had forgotten how. "I'm Stephen Walsh," the man said. "Mrs. Cooper's attorney. We'd like to speak with you about Ethan's situation." "His situation?" I managed. Rachel's smile got tighter. "Can we come in? This is important." I should have said no. Should have closed the door, but I was frozen. Ethan appeared behind me in the hallway. He looked at Rachel. His face was completely blank. No surprise, no emotion, nothing. He just watched her the way he'd watched traffic patterns or pricing errors. Analytical, calculating. "Come in," he said. My legs moved without my permission. I stepped back. They came into my house, Rachel and her lawyer, and I felt sick. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan and I ate breakfast every morning, where we'd organize school meeting notes and scan documents and planned his future. Now Rachel sat there, hands folded while her lawyer opened his briefcase. "Mrs. Cooper, we're here to discuss custody and financial guardianship," he said. Professional, smooth, practiced. "My client, Rachel Cooper, has maintained parental rights to Ethan and wishes to resume active custody." "Custody?" I said. "He's 16 precisely," Walsh said. "Still a minor and my client never formally terminated parental rights. She's been co-parenting from a distance, maintaining contact through appropriate channels." "That's a lie," I said. My voice shook. "She hasn't called in 11 years. Rachel spoke then, soft voice, sad eyes that looked fake. "Mom, I know you've done a wonderful job raising Ethan, but he needs his mother now, especially with the money and the attention. He needs guidance." "He has guidance." Walsh pulled out papers. Documents with official-looking seals and signatures. "These show Mrs. Cooper's maintained legal parental rights. She's documented her financial support and communication over the years. She's entitled to custody and given Ethan's minor status, management of his financial assets until he reaches majority." I looked at the papers. They looked real professional. My heart was hammering. "Those are fake," I said. "But I had no proof." "They're properly notarized and filed," Walsh said calmly. "Unless you can prove otherwise." I looked at Ethan. He was watching Rachel, his face still blank, but I could see something in his eyes, something I couldn't read. "Ethan," I said quietly. "What do we do?" He looked at me for 1 second, then back at Rachel. "We should get a lawyer," he said. Getting a lawyer turned out to be easier than using one. I found Linda Reyes through a referral family law attorney with 20 years of experience. She met with us 3 days after Rachel showed up. Came to our house because I couldn't face going to an office. I brought every binder I had, years of school records, therapy notes, medical appointments, every piece of paper proving I'd raised Ethan. My hands shook the entire time I carried them to the kitchen table. Ethan sat quietly in the chair beside me, watching, always watching. Linda spread Rachel's documents across the table, the ones Walsh had presented. She studied them for over an hour, reading every page, checking signatures, examining the stamps. Finally, she looked up. Her face told me everything before she spoke. "These look legitimate," she said carefully. "Very professionally done, but they're fake," I said. "She's lying. She hasn't seen him in 11 years. "I believe you, but do you have concrete proof these documents are forged?" I pulled out my binders. "I have everything. Every school meeting, every doctor visit, every therapy session." Linda looked through them, nodded slowly. "This is excellent documentation. It proves you've been the primary caregiver, but Mrs. Cooper, without hard evidence that her documents are fake. A judge might rule in her favor." "Why?" "Because she never legally terminated parental rights. There's no court record of custody transfer. Schools and doctors accepted you informally." But she paused. "Did you ever file for formal guardianship?" The room went cold. I didn't think I needed to. She abandoned him. I know, but legally, without documentation of that abandonment, without her signing away rights, she's still his parent on paper. Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "Her lawyer will argue that informal arrangement doesn't override parental rights." I couldn't breathe, "So she can just take him. She's not trying to take physical custody." He's 16. Courts rarely force teenagers to move. She's after financial guardianship, control of his assets until he's 18. 3.2 million. That's what this was about. Can we fight it? I asked. Yes, but I need you to understand. Her case looks strong. She has documentation, a compelling narrative about maintaining involvement from a distance. Unless we can prove those documents are fraudulent, we'll lose. Linda didn't disagree. I looked at Ethan. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, face blank. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan, I said quietly. Do you understand what's happening? Yes. Are you scared? He thought about that. No. How could he not be scared? I was terrified. Linda explained the next steps. Depositions, discovery, court dates. It would take weeks, maybe months. The whole time Rachel's claim would hang over us. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and broke down. We're going to lose you, I said through tears. After everything, after 11 years, we're going to lose. Ethan stood up, didn't say anything, just walked to his room and closed the door. I wanted him to tell me it would be okay, to show some emotion, some fear, something, but he just left me there. I cried alone at the table for an hour. The deposition started 2 weeks later. Rachel went first. She sat in the conference room at her lawyer's office, perfectly composed, hairstyled, makeup subtle, wearing a soft gray sweater that made her look maternal. Walsh asked her questions. She answered smoothly. Can you describe your involvement in Ethan's life over the past 11 years? I've tried to maintain consistent contact, she said. Her voice was steady, warm, apologetic. I visited monthly when possible. Sent financial support through money orders. Called regularly to check on his progress. Why didn't you take physical custody? I felt it was better for Ethan to have stability with my mother while I dealt with personal challenges. But I never stopped being his mother. I never stopped caring. She provided dates, specific months when she claimed to have visited, exact dollar amounts she supposedly sent. December 2012, $300. April 2014, $500. On and on, a detailed financial record of support that never happened. I sat there listening, nails digging into my palms. Mrs. Cooper, why are you seeking custody arrangements now? Walsh asked. Because Ethan has significant assets that need proper management and because he's approaching adulthood, I want to be present for this crucial transition to guide him to make up for lost time. She looked at me when she said it. Sad eyes, regretful smile. I wanted to scream, wanted to call her a liar in front of everyone, but Linda had warned me, stay calm. Don't react. Let her tell her story. After Rachel finished, Linda took me aside. Her testimony is detailed, consistent. That's very convincing to judges. It's all lies. I know, but can you prove it? I couldn't. Ethan's deposition was 3 days later. Walsh asked him questions about his childhood, about memories of his mother, about her involvement. Do you remember your mother visiting you? Walsh asked. I don't recall specific visits. Do you remember phone calls from her? I'd have to check my records. What about financial support? Did you know she was sending money? I don't remember receiving money from her. Walsh looked pleased. He thought Ethan's memory was poor, that it supported Rachel's narrative that she'd been involved. But Ethan, being autistic, simply didn't remember clearly. He had no idea. Linda asked Ethan questions, too. Can you describe your relationship with your grandmother? She takes care of me, cooks meals, helps with school. She's always been there. Do you want to live with her? Yes. Do you want your mother to have control of your finances? No. Short answers. Direct. True. But they felt weak against Rachel's detailed lies. After the deposition, Linda drove us home. He did well, she said. But Mrs. Cooper, I have to be honest. Without evidence proving Rachel's documents are forged, this is going to be difficult. How difficult? We might lose. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan being taken away, Rachel controlling his money, him turning 18 and being free. But those 2 years feeling like forever. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up, saw a light under Ethan's door. I opened it quietly. He was at his computer. 3 monitors glowing. Lines of code scrolled across one screen. Documents and data filled the others. Ethan, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He didn't turn around. I know you need to sleep. Court is tomorrow. I'm almost done. Done with what? He kept typing. My records. I moved closer. Saw spreadsheets with dates, files with names. I recognized my bank statements, calendar entries, phone records. Ethan, I don't know what to do, I said. My voice broke. I don't know how to fight this. He stopped typing. Didn't turn around. Just tell the truth tomorrow, he said quietly. That's all you have to do. The truth isn't enough. She has documents. She has proof. Fake proof, but proof. Tell the truth, he repeated. I wanted to shake him to make him understand how serious this was. But he just sat there, calm, focused, like losing me didn't matter. I went back to bed, didn't sleep, just lay there in the dark, terrified. Ethan stayed at his computer all night. I heard the keyboard clicking until dawn. I had no idea what he was doing. I just knew I was about to lose him, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Morning came, whether I wanted it to or not. I got up at 6 o'clock, made breakfast. Neither of us would eat. Ethan came out of his room at 7, showered, dressed in the button-down shirt we'd bought for court. He looked older than 16, tired, but calm. You ready? I asked. Yes. We drove to the courthouse in silence. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Ethan stared out the window. Linda met us on the steps. Remember, stay calm. Let me do the talking. Ethan, answer questions directly, but don't volunteer information. Ethan nodded. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, that smell of old paper and floor polish. Judge Harrison sat at the bench. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back. Rachel sat at the front table with Walsh. She dressed carefully, soft colors, minimal jewelry, hair loose. She looked like a concerned mother. We sat at our table. Linda on one side of me, Ethan on the other. All rise, the bailiff said. The hearing began. Walsh stood, presented his case smoothly. Rachel Cooper, devoted mother, maintained consistent involvement despite personal challenges. Documentary evidence of parental rights never terminated, financial support provided, regular contact maintained. He laid out the documents on the evidence table, the custody papers, the co-parenting agreements, the financial records, all fake, all convincing. Judge Harrison reviewed them carefully, took her time. Then she looked at Rachel. Mrs. Cooper, can you describe your involvement in Ethan's life over the past 11 years? Rachel's voice was steady, warm. I tried to stay connected as much as possible, Your Honor. I visited when I could. I sent money to help with his care. I called regularly to check on his progress. Why didn't you maintain physical custody? I felt it was better for Ethan to have stability with my mother while I addressed personal issues, but I never abandoned him. I never stopped being his mother. She said it with such conviction, such sincerity. I wanted to scream. The judge asked more questions. Rachel answered all of them. December 2013, she visited for Ethan's birthday. April 2015, she sent $500 for therapy costs. May 2017, she called to discuss his progress in school. Lies. All lies, but detailed, consistent lies. Judge Harrison looked thoughtful. Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. Then it was Linda's turn. She presented my binders, years of school meetings, therapy records, medical appointments, every piece of evidence that I'd raised Ethan alone. But as she went through them, I could see the judge's expression. Sympathy, but doubt. Miss Reyes, Judge Harrison said, these records show Mrs. Cooper has been the primary caregiver, but I don't see formal guardianship documentation, no court order transferring custody, no legal termination of parental rights. My chest tightened. Your Honor, Linda said carefully. Rachel Cooper abandoned Ethan when he was 5 years old. My client has documentation of that abandonment, but without Miss Rachel Cooper's signature on custody termination papers. Without legal documentation, her parental rights remain intact. The judge looked at me, not unkindly. Mrs. Cooper, I understand you've done excellent work raising your grandson, but legally, without proof that his mother abandoned her parental rights, her claim has standing. The room tilted. Rachel looked at Walsh, smiled slightly. She thought she'd won and my heart was pounding so hard I couldn't breathe. I looked at Ethan beside me, desperate for something, anything. His face was completely blank, unreadable. I leaned close, whispered, she's lying. We have to stop her. He turned his head slightly, whispered back, let her talk. What? Let her say everything she wants to say. I didn't understand. We were losing. And he wanted Rachel to keep talking. Judge Harrison looked at Ethan. Young man, do you wish to speak? Long pause. Ethan sat perfectly still. Then he stood. Yes, Your Honor. I have evidence. My heart stopped. What evidence? I'd given Linda everything I had. Approach, Judge Harrison said. Ethan picked up a bag I hadn't noticed him carrying. Walked to the witness stand, calm, steady, like he'd done this 100 times. He pulled out a laptop. May I connect this to the display, Your Honor? Judge Harrison looked surprised. What are you presenting? Verification of document authenticity and timeline evidence. He spoke clearly. Directly the way he always did. I built a system that proves whether documents are real or forged. Walsh stood immediately. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We weren't informed of this evidence. Your client presented fraudulent documents 6 weeks ago, Ethan said, looking at Walsh. I'm presenting analysis of those documents now. Judge Harrison studied Ethan. Proceed, but this better be relevant. Ethan connected his laptop. The courtroom display lit up. He pulled up Rachel's custody documents first, the ones Walsh had presented. They appeared on the screen, official looking with stamps and signatures. These documents claim to be from 2011 through 2020, Ethan said. But the digital metadata shows they were created 6 weeks ago, right after the news story about my sale aired. He clicked through screens showing creation dates, file properties, editing history, all timestamped, all recent. Walsh objected. Metadata can be manipulated. Not in this case, Ethan said calmly. The signature verification shows additional discrepancies. He pulled up my copy of his birth certificate. Rachel's signature from 2005, then ran a program that analyzed the signatures on the custody documents. Numbers appeared. Comparisons, statistical analysis. The pressure patterns don't match. The letter formation is inconsistent. The spacing and slant are different. These signatures were forged. Judge Harrison leaned forward. How do you know this? I built a verification system. It analyzes documents for authenticity. It's what I sold last month. You're 16, the judge said. Yes. She blinked. Continue. Ethan pulled up a new screen, a timeline. These are my records. I've been documenting my life since I was 9 years old. He showed spreadsheets, scanned documents, photographs, all timestamped, all verified. Mrs. Cooper claims she visited in December 2013. Here's my grandmother's calendar from that month showing our schedule. Here are photos from that week with timestamps. Here's my therapy session notes from December 9th. Therapist confirmed no mother present. Here's the school attendance record showing I was present every day that month. He clicked through more screens. December 2013. Rachel wasn't there. Mrs. Cooper claims she sent money orders. Here are 7 years of my grandmother's complete bank records. No deposits from Rachel Cooper. Not $1. Bank statements appeared on screen. Every transaction highlighted. Every source documented. Nothing from Rachel. Mrs. Cooper claims she called regularly. Here are phone company records from 2010 to present. 0 calls from her number after December 24, 2010. Phone records, years of them. Rachel's number nowhere. April 2015. She claims she sent $500 for therapy. Here's the bank statement showing no such deposit. Here's my grandmother's calendar showing she paid out of pocket. Here's the receipt. Every claim Rachel had made. Ethan demolished with proof. Walsh stood again. Your Honor, this evidence wasn't disclosed in discovery because you presented fraudulent documents 6 weeks ago. Ethan said, I built the verification system to analyze them. That's impossible, Walsh said, you couldn't build something like this in 6 weeks. I didn't, Ethan said, I've been building it for 7 years. I just finished analyzing these specific documents 6 weeks ago. Judge Harrison stared at him. You've been documenting your life for 7 years. Yes, Your Honor. Every calendar entry my grandmother made, every receipt she kept, every therapy session, every school meeting, every bank transaction, everything is timestamped, cross-referenced, and verified. The system makes it impossible to alter retroactively. He pulled up more screens, showed the judge how it worked, how each document connected to others, how the verification codes proved nothing had been changed. So when Mrs. Cooper says she visited monthly, sent money, called regularly, I can prove she didn't because I have proof of what actually happened, what was real. The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison looked at Rachel. Mrs. Cooper, can you explain these discrepancies? Rachel's face had gone pale. She looked at Walsh. The metadata could be wrong, she said. Her voice shook. The dates might be. I mean, I did visit. I did send money. When exactly? The judge asked. December 2013, I remember. Do you have proof, receipts, photos, anything? Rachel stammered. I didn't keep records. I was there. I know I was there. But you have detailed financial records of money orders sent. Yes, I mean those show. She was falling apart, contradicting herself. The confident mother from 20 minutes ago was gone. Mrs. Cooper, Judge Harrison said coldly. Did you or did you not falsify custody documents? I know, my lawyer said. Walsh looked sick. Judge Harrison turned to Ethan. This verification system, it's legitimate. Yes, Your Honor. I sold it last month to Anderson Security for $3.2 million. They verified its accuracy before purchase. The judge's eyebrows rose. Then she looked at the evidence again, at the timeline, at the proof that Rachel had been gone for 11 years. I've seen enough, she said. She ruled from the bench. No recess, no deliberation. Rachel Cooper, I find your testimony not credible and your documentation fraudulent. Full custody and guardianship is awarded to Vivian Cooper. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation of perjury and fraud. Rachel made a sound like choking. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck. It was over. Outside the courthouse, standing in the afternoon sun, I finally understood. You knew, I said. You've been protecting us all along. Ethan nodded once, didn't smile, just nodded. 6 months later, things looked different. Ethan couldn't work in data security anymore. The non-compete clause from selling his verification system was clear, so he started a new company, Software Testing and Quality Assurance. I'm hiring people like me, he said over breakfast one morning. Autistic people, we see patterns others miss. His first hire was Stephen. I recognized the name immediately. Stephen had been my student 20 years ago. I'd fought the school board for him in 4th grade. They said he'd never hold a job. Now he was Ethan's lead quality tester. Then Marcus, then Lily, more of my former students, kids people had given up on. I visited Ethan's office one afternoon. Small space, 6 desks, everyone wearing headphones, quiet, focused. Stephen saw me, took off his headphones. Mrs. Cooper, you told the principal I wasn't broken, just different. His voice cracked. Ethan says the same thing. I couldn't speak, just nodded. Rachel got 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service at an autism resource center. 3 months into her sentence, I was dropping off donated supplies and saw her on the floor reading to nonverbal children. She looked up, saw me. We both froze. She looked exhausted, humbled, nothing like the woman who'd shown up with a lawyer. The center director told me, not knowing who I was, that volunteer comes in extra hours. Says she's learning what she should have learned years ago. I didn't speak to Rachel, just watched for a moment, then left. Some things don't need words. On a Tuesday evening a few weeks later, I brought dinner to Ethan's apartment like I always did. His yellow cup sat on the counter, chipped, but still his favorite. We ate at his small table, quiet, comfortable. I started clearing plates. Ethan put his phone down. Vivon. I turned around. He was looking at his hands. I know what you gave up for me. I sat back down, waited. Your friend stopped calling. You stopped going places. I heard you on the phone once turning down a trip because you couldn't leave me. Ethan, you could have sent me away like she did. School suggested it. You didn't. My throat was tight. You're my grandson. I know. He looked up at me. But you chose it every day, even when I couldn't say thank you. Silence, just the hum of his refrigerator. It mattered, he said quietly. I reached across the table, put my hand near his, not touching, but close. You were worth every single day, I said. He nodded once. I know that now. We sat there a moment longer. Then I got up, finished the dishes while he opened his laptop. Same routine, same comfortable silence, but something important had been said. I kissed the top of his head on my way out. He didn't flinch. See you Tuesday, I said. Tuesday, he confirmed. I drove home through streets I'd driven 1,000 times before. Same route, same turns. The way Ethan liked things, the way I'd learned to like things, too. My phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Ethan. Thank you. Just those 2 words. I smiled the whole way home. Story 2. When I faced my wife and her lover in court, my lawyer said, Your Honor, one more witness. The room went dead quiet. My chest locked. No. It can't be, I whispered. My wife's smile collapsed when she saw who would walk in. I was 37 then, but I'm telling this now at 56 and I can still hear the bafe say all rise. Like it just happened last week. My wife, well soon to be ex-Nadia, sat across the courtroom with her mom, Vivon, who always looked like she just smelled something sour. Nadia had that same smug smile she wore whenever she thought she'd already won, like she'd planned the whole game and I was just catching up. My attorney, Mara Keene, leaned toward me and whispered, I'm going to call a surprise witness. I stared at her. You serious? She gave the smallest nod and stood up like she had a grenade in her hand. Your Honor, she said, calm and clear. "We request to call Landon Puett." The room shifted. The back door creaked open and there he was, my cousin. Landon freaking Puett. His boots hit the floor slow, heavy, like he was walking underwater. He didn't look at me. Eyes down, shoulders tight, like a man heading to his own sentencing. Vivon stiffened. Nadia blinked fast. Once, twice, then her face just drained like she'd swallowed a mouthful of bleach. Her fingers clutched her sleeve, white-knuckled. The judge took off his glasses, pinched the bridge of his nose, and sighed like he'd been waiting for this shoe to drop since 9 a.m. The clerk shuffled her papers too loud, like she didn't want to be here either. Vivon leaned in toward Nadia, whispering something fast, hand clenched on her shoulder like she could control the damage through sheer grip. And me. I just sat there, hands folded, heart in my throat. I couldn't even blink, couldn't speak. I just kept my eyes on Landon while he stepped up to the stand like his boots were full of lead. Quick note, before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Let's see how far this story's traveled tonight. Thanks, and now let's continue. He raised his right hand, took the oath, voice low and slow like he was choking on it. He still wouldn't look my way, not even a glance. The whole room had gone dead quiet. So quiet, I heard the buzz of the fluorescent light above us and the faint hum of the air vent in the corner. My stomach flipped. I didn't know what Mara had on him. Didn't know if he was about to help me or bury me for good. All I knew was that the next few minutes were going to break something wide open, and not just in the courtroom. I kept thinking back to when this whole mess started. Before the lies, before the custody hearings, before Mara's steady voice in my ear, back when I still believed my marriage had cracks, not craters. And I swear, sitting there in that stiff wooden chair, I remembered the exact moment when the first chunk of my life broke loose. A Thursday, late April, Spokane traffic, and the kind of kiss that burned its way into my memory like acid. But that came later. Right now, Landon sat on that witness stand, staring at the floor like it held all the answers. And for the first time in months, I saw fear on Nadia's face. Real fear, like she'd finally run out of ways to control the board. And right then, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything close to victory. I felt cold, the kind that tells you the weather's turning and you're still miles from shelter. The judge leaned forward and said, "You may proceed." Mara opened her folder and the papers inside barely made a sound. Landon blinked once, jaw tight, then raised his eyes for the first time and looked straight at Nadia. She came through the front door like nothing had happened. It was 9:40. I watched the digital clock flip while I sat at the kitchen table, lights off, except the stove light behind me. She dropped her purse on the bench, let her keys jingle too long in the bowl, and kicked off her shoes like she'd been out saving the world, not lying straight to my face. I didn't move. I didn't even look up. I just said, "We'll talk in the morning." She paused for half a second, then walked down the hall like I'd said nothing at all. That was her game. Control the room by pretending there's no fire. I stayed in the kitchen till I heard the bedroom door click shut. Then went and laid on top of the covers in Tate's room. Still had my jeans and boots on. Couldn't shake the image of Landon's hand in her hair. That fake little laugh she does when she's trying to be irresistible. The sprinkler next door kicked on just after 10 o'clock. I counted every tick it made. That ticking became my heartbeat that night. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and thought about everything I'd missed. The new perfume. Some floral crap she said was from a free sampler. Her phone suddenly having a lock screen. Her mom calling out of nowhere needing her to come over and talk 3 times a week like they were a Mother Otter version of the UN. And I bought it all. By the time the sun cracked through the blinds, I was wired tight. I got up, made eggs, toast, packed the kids' lunches. All of it like I was trying to outrun the clock. Maya came down in her little purple hoodie, yawning and rubbing her eyes. Tate followed a minute later, dragging his dinosaur blanket across the floor. I gave him an extra squeeze that morning. Held on a few seconds too long. He didn't complain. He never did. Nadia came down late. Wet hair. That silky robe she only wore when she wanted something. No makeup, no eye contact. She walked to the coffee maker like I wasn't even there. I kept my voice low. "I saw you at Landon's shop." Her hand paused over the mug. She blinked once, then set it down. Missed the coaster, which she never did. That told me plenty. "Don't do this in front of the kids," she said. I didn't argue, just nodded and said. After school, then at 8:10, I dropped Maya at Lincoln Heights and Tate at the daycare off 27th. I circled the block twice before heading back home. My hands kept tightening around the steering wheel, loosening, then tightening again like I was trying to wring answers out of the leather. I walked through the door and found her at the sink rinsing a bowl like she didn't have anything to hide. "You want to say it or should I?" I asked. She didn't turn around. "It's not what you think, then say what it is." She finally turned, leaned against the counter like she was on break. Her eyes were flat, empty. "It's been going on for a few months." I didn't speak. Couldn't. My ears rang like I'd just taken a punch to the head. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she added softer now. I said, "You think that makes it better?" "I'm late," she said. I blinked. "Late for what?" She didn't say it, just looked at me like I should already know. Then I felt it hit me like a second slap. "You're pregnant?" She didn't flinch, didn't nod, just said it like it was a weather report. "It might be yours." I stepped back like she'd spit in my face. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. There wasn't a single word in the English language for what that sentence did to me. She looked down, fiddled with her sleeve. "I can't leave him right now." "You mean Landon?" She didn't answer. I leaned on the kitchen table and finally found my voice. "I want a divorce." "No," she said instantly. "I'm not giving you one. The kids need stability. You can stay here. Use the guest room." I barked a laugh, loud and bitter. "You want me to sleep 10 feet away while you sneak around with my cousin?" She didn't blink. "I'm not uprooting the kids." "That's not true. You're not giving up control. That's what this is." Her face changed then. Sharpened. She saw I wasn't going to fold, and she didn't like that one bit. That night, it got worse. I'd put the kids to bed early, told them mommy had a headache and needed quiet. I stayed in the guest room, door cracked, TV off. Around 8:30, I heard the front door open, then footsteps, then laughter. I came out and there they were, Landon and Nadia, sitting at the kitchen table like it was some kind of dinner party. Landon had the nerve to sit in my chair. Vivian walked in behind them with a Tupperware of banana bread and a smile like she just won a lawsuit. She didn't even say hello, just walked in like she lived there. Vivian said, "Trent, be a man. Sign the house over so my daughter has security." Nadia slid a folder across the table. "It's just a quick claim. You'll keep your truck and your tools." I stared at all three of them. My stomach burned, my pulse hammered in my ears. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I walked down the hall, grabbed the kids' backpacks, both birth certificates, and my dad's old metal tackle box from the hall closet. Packed it all in less than 10 minutes. I walked out at 9:15 with Tate on my hip and Maya clinging to my coat. We stayed 2 nights in a weekly rate place on Sprague. $86 a night. Cash bed smelled like pine cleaner and sadness. Then I found us a 2-bedroom near 14th and Ray. $1,380 a month. Rough paint, weak water pressure, but it had a working lock and no ghosts in the kitchen. That was all I needed to start over. The room on Sprague smelled like old carpet cleaner and mildew. But Maya liked the bunk beds and Tate was just happy we had peanut butter. That first night, I kept my phone by the pillow and didn't sleep more than 10 minutes at a time. Every sound outside made me think Landon was dumb enough to come looking. He didn't. Next morning, I walked the kids down to the corner for donuts. It was cloudy, wind sharp. I didn't have gloves, so I held the hot coffee cup too tight just to feel something. Maya asked if we were going home soon. I told her this was home for now. Later that day, I drove over to the house when I knew she wouldn't be there. Packed up the kids' clothes, toothbrushes, their nightlight shaped like a bear. I left the furniture, left the dishes, left the photos on the wall. I didn't want a single thing from that kitchen, especially not the table where Landon had sat like he belonged there. The next evening, I met with Nadia at her mom's place. Neutral ground, if you could call Vivon's living room neutral. Beige everything. Her scentless fake candles lined the mantel like trophies for a game no one wanted to play. Nadia sat stiff on the couch, arms crossed, face pinched like she hadn't slept either. Vivon stood by the fireplace like a lawyer who'd never passed the bar. "I want the kids this weekend," I said. Vivian chimed in first. "You abandoned your family, Trent. Showing up now doesn't fix anything." I looked at Nadia. "That true? I abandoned them?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You left." I nodded slowly. "You're right. I did." Vivon stepped forward. "You think you can just come and go? Take what you want? This isn't some garage sale, Trent. I didn't come for furniture. I came for my kids. And I'm not asking." "You don't have legal rights to custody yet," Nadia said. "Not until the court decides. Then I'll see you in court." She flinched at that. Not much, but I saw it. The way her lip twitched, the way her foot tapped once on the carpet before she caught herself. That night, I called a buddy of mine, Devin, from the warehouse. Told him I needed a lawyer. He said he knew a name. That came later. For now, all I had was a week-to-week rental, a thin mattress that squeaked every time I turned, and 2 kids I didn't want to lose. I went to Walmart, bought some cheap curtains, and a plastic drawer set so the kids had somewhere to put their socks. Maya made a sign for the door with marker. Fort Awesome. I taped it up like it was a lease agreement. But peace didn't last long. A few days after that little standoff at Vivian's, I got home from work and found an envelope duct taped to the apartment door. No stamp, no address, just my name written in black ink like it had been scratched in with a nail. Inside were 3 things. A picture of Nadia holding her stomach like a maternity ad, a note that said, "We're starting a family. Please don't interfere." And a copy of a quitclaim deed folded so the signature line faced up. It wasn't just tone deaf, it was war. I called her straight to voicemail, left a message. "Don't tape anything to my door again. This isn't high school." Next morning, I dropped Maya off at school and Tate at daycare. Same as usual. On the way back to my truck, I noticed a red sedan idling across the street, tinted windows, Landon's plate frame from the shop on Illinois. He drove off when I looked straight at him. I started documenting everything after that. Wrote it all down in a spiral notebook I bought from the gas station. Dates, times, weird stuff just in case. Then came the hammer. Friday night, just after dinner, a sheriff knocked on my door. Real polite older guy. He handed me papers, temporary protection order. Said I wasn't allowed near Nadia or the house. Claimed I'd punched a hole in the wall beside her head. My ears went hot. That isn't true. I said there's no hole. The one she's talking about. I patched that last winter when the doorknob went through. He didn't care. Tell it to the judge, he said. I filed a response at the courthouse Monday morning. Spent $10 printing photos off my phone from February showing the patch job. Even had a picture of the paint bucket I used. Good thing I'm the kind of guy who takes before and after shots of everything he fixes. It wasn't about proof. It was about principle now. The judge reviewed my response and tossed the emergency filing, setting a formal hearing we knew they'd never attend. That weekend, Maya got sick. Just a stomach bug. But I stayed up with her all night. She kept asking when she'd go back home. I told her soon. I didn't know if it was true. Sunday night, I texted Nadia. Need a new custody schedule. You want to be difficult? I'll file first. She replied an hour later. You walked out. Don't cry now. I didn't answer. Monday, I left work early to meet with the lawyer Devin told me about, Mara Keene. That part's coming. But right before I walked into that meeting, something else happened. I got a text from Landon. New number just said, sign the house and nobody gets dragged into court. That was it. I took a screenshot, added it to the notebook. That was the exact second I stopped hoping we could handle this quietly. I didn't answer Landon's text. I just saved the number, labeled it threat number 1, and tossed my phone in the glove box so I wouldn't snap and call him back. Next day after work, I found myself parked outside Keene Law on Garland, staring at the building like it might explode the second I stepped in. Devin had vouched for her, said his cousin walked out with full custody in the house. That was enough for me to try, but I couldn't sit in some glass office with Tate bouncing in a chair. So, I texted the number Mara's assistant gave me and asked if she could meet somewhere else. She picked the little coffee shop on 29th, the one with the chalkboard menu and a kid's corner full of half-broken toys. Mara walked in 5 minutes after we did. Black blazer, no frills, hair pulled back like she didn't have time for nonsense. She looked right at me, not around me, and said, Trent. I stood, shook her hand. Yeah, thanks for meeting here. She glanced at Tate, who was already building a tower with those big foam blocks. This works, she said. Let's talk. We sat at a table in the corner. I had my spiral notebook, but I didn't even crack it open. I didn't know where to start, so I just let it spill out. Short, broken sentences. Landon, the shop, the doorhole lie. Vivant acting like a district judge in her own living room. Mara didn't interrupt. She just nodded now and then and wrote everything down in this legal pad that had one of those stiff cardboard backs like she'd been using it since law school. She asked straight-up questions. When did you see them together? April 24th. When did you move out? Next night. Who watches the kids after school? Me. Nadia used to pick them up twice a week, but lately it's all me. How much did you make last year? $746 with mileage. She kept writing. Not fast, not slow, just steady, like this was all going somewhere solid. Does Nadia's mother still have access to your old house? Yeah, spare key. And she uses it like it's her name on the mortgage. Mara looked up. What about the pregnancy? I swallowed hard. She said she's late. Told me it might be mine. Didn't sound too convinced. She tell you that before or after you mentioned divorce before? She said she couldn't leave him. Then dropped that little time bomb. Mara nodded like she'd heard it all before. And I guess she probably had file for divorce this week and request temporary orders. Do not sign anything she gives you, Trent. I don't care if it looks harmless. Screenshot every message. Keep writing in your notebook. And don't meet her alone without your phone recording or someone nearby. I sat back in my chair, chest tight. I don't want to be that guy, the paranoid one. She leaned in a little. You're not paranoid. You're in a fight. If you want custody, if you want the judge to take you seriously, you need a paper trail longer than your emotions. The retainer was $4,200. I didn't argue. I didn't blink. That night, I listed my dad's old 14-feet aluminum boat on Facebook Marketplace. It had been sitting on cinder blocks in my mom's backyard since he passed. Needed a new plug and probably a full patch job, but a guy in Cheney took it for $1,250. Said he liked projects. I loaded it onto his flatbed myself. Felt like sawing off a piece of my ribs, but I did it. I used part of what was left to buy Maya a used desk from a guy on South Perry. $40 flat, wobbled a little, smelled like lemon cleaner and stale gum, but it fit in her corner of the room. She ran her hand across it and said, "It's like a real school desk." That same day, I started parking 2 blocks away from the rental. Didn't trust Landon not to show up unannounced. I also changed the locks. Landlord didn't love it, but I paid for the hardware and did it myself. At night, I stayed up way too late watching Tate breathe. He snored soft like a tiny dog. Something about hearing him sleep reminded me that not everything was ruined. At least not yet. Mara filed everything within 48 hours. Divorce petition, request for temporary custody, financial disclosures. We got a temporary hearing date. May 19th. It was circled on the calendar in thick red marker. Maya's idea. In the meantime, I started taking photos of everything. Maya's backpack on the kitchen chair, the kids brushing their teeth, lunches packed, gas receipts, anything that showed I was the one doing the work. I didn't know what would matter, so I just grabbed it all. Nadia sent a text saying she wanted to pick the kids up from school sometime next week. I said she'd need to give me a schedule. She fired back, "Don't be difficult." I didn't respond. Just logged it in the notebook with the date and time. I picked up a cheap laser printer from an office supply store and started printing copies of everything just in case my phone ever got stolen or accidentally lost. Every night I added something new to the file. Every day I got a little quieter. Not sad, just focused, like someone loading a truck before a long haul. By the end of that week, I had 3 binders. One for communication, one for receipts, one for the parenting stuff. Mara said, "Judges don't care how angry you are. They care what you can prove." So, I stopped talking and started documenting. I was halfway through reheating leftover spaghetti when my phone buzzed again. Landon, new number. Last chance. Sign the house over and we keep this out of court. I stared at it for maybe 3 seconds before I screenshot it, labeled it threat number 2, and sent it to Mara with 0 commentary. She responded 10 minutes later. "Thanks. Documented. Don't engage." That's when I knew this wasn't about custody. Wasn't even about money. This was about control. They thought I'd fold under pressure if they hit hard enough and fast enough. I've never been the folding kind. The pressure started picking up in public, not just in my inbox. First came the whispers at church. Vivant had her own PR campaign going. She wore her sad eyes and hymn book face, telling folks I'd abandoned my family, saying I'd left my kids like a stray dog chasing a passing truck. Nadia doubled down on Facebook. Big paragraph about choosing happiness, breaking generational cycles, and stepping into her power. Looked like something stolen from a Pinterest divorce board. Couple of her friends commented heart emojis. One said, "So proud of you, babe." It made me sick. I didn't reply. I printed the post and filed it in binder 2 under public statements. That habit paid off. Those February patch photos ended up saving me in court. Work started to get messy around that time, too. One of the big GCs I delivered to, Stratton Industrial, called my supervisor and asked if I was stable enough to manage their South Hill delivery. Word was someone said I was in the middle of a messy domestic situation. I kept my mouth shut and my numbers up, didn't miss a route, didn't take a day off, let my performance do the talking while the rest of my life burned behind me. At home, I kept things tight. Simple dinners, shower schedules, clean clothes, no room for chaos. I washed dishes while Maya read on the floor and Tate used my forearm as a road for his toy dump truck. Then one night, Maya's teacher called, said she'd drawn a sad picture during class, a stick figure in a corner, another with a big mouth and lines coming out of it. She didn't say it was Landon, but I already knew. I waited till bedtime. Maya curled up with her soccer blanket and I asked, "Was everything okay at Mom's?" She stared at the ceiling. "I don't like Landon's laugh. It makes me feel yucky inside." That was all she said. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't push her. I just rubbed her back and whispered, "You're safe here, okay?" She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't totally convinced. The next day, I got another little gem. Nadia texted me a picture of a pregnancy test. 2 lines, date scribbled in pen across the corner like some kind of stamp of authenticity. Underneath, she wrote, "Let's act like grown-ups." What did that even mean? I stared at the photo for a full minute. Then, I deleted it and wrote down the text in the notebook just like everything else. I wasn't playing the reaction game anymore. That night, I pulled out my laptop, changed every single password I had, email, banking, even my Netflix. Then I went to a credit union off Grand and opened a separate checking account under just my name. First deposit, $610. That was all I could pull after paying bills, but it was mine and it was clean. I took my name off the old joint account and left exactly 62 cents in it. That was my line. Mara called the next morning. "Any new drama?" I told her about the Facebook post, the test strip, the new bank account. She said, "Good. That's smart. Keep doing the kids' stuff. Judges like stability because it's not about you or her. It's about them." So, I leaned into that. Lunches stayed simple. Half a ham sandwich, apple slices, string cheese. I started tucking in little notes for Maya that said things like, "You're tough or you can do hard things." She didn't say much about them, but I caught her smiling once as she tucked one into her pencil case. Vivon made another move that weekend, sent an email to my work account by mistake, CCing Nadia, and claiming she was concerned about the children's welfare. Said I was erratic, said I might need professional help. I didn't respond. I printed it. Binder 2, subsection interference. At this point, it wasn't about custody anymore. It was about getting me to break, trying to get me angry enough to yell, desperate enough to sign, reckless enough to storm in and make a scene. I wasn't giving them that. I stayed on script. I stuck to the notebook. I kept the receipts and the bedtime routines and the scheduled pickups. I folded laundry with my jaw clenched and played Uno like it was the last game on earth because I knew what they wanted and I knew I wasn't giving it to them. Court was set for 10 a.m. May 19th. I dropped the kids at school early, stopped by the gas station for a black coffee and one of those stale sausage biscuits, and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I walked in. I wore the one decent shirt I had, the light blue button D down that didn't pull too bad across the shoulders if I kept my back straight. I'd ironed it the night before on a towel across the counter. The courthouse smelled like old books and nerves. I met Mara by the metal detector. She wore black again, hair tied up, binder in hand, cool and sharp, like she had courtroom blood in her veins. "You ready?" she asked, flipping through her notes. "Not even a little," I said. She gave a small smile. "That's fine. Just answer straight. Let them flail. You keep steady." Up in courtroom 2B, the judge was already on the bench when we walked in. I took my seat at the table and didn't look across the aisle until I heard heels. That's when I saw Nadia. White dress, curled hair, makeup done to the nines. She looked like she was auditioning for a perfume commercial, not fighting for custody of 2 actual children. Vivon trailed behind her, lips tight, clutching a notepad like she thought she was co-counsel. Nadia's lawyer was younger than I expected. Tan suit, shiny hair, and a tone that made everything sound like it was my fault just for existing. The judge started with the basics. Housing, jobs, who had the kids, who picked them up from school, who took them to the doctor. I kept my voice plain. No emotion, just dates, facts, and what time the kids usually brush their teeth. Nadia's lawyer took her turn and made me sound like a man without a door frame. Always coming, going, selling equipment in 3 counties with no real home for his kids. Said, I bounced from rentals and worked irregular hours. Mara didn't raise her voice. She just slid a printed sheet across the table, my pickup calendar for the last 8 weeks. All color-coded, all clean. "This shows who's actually been doing the parenting," she said. The judge studied it for a full minute. No expression. Then he looked at Nadia and asked who had taken Maya to the dentist last month. Nadia blinked. I think it was maybe me. I'd have to check. I didn't say a word. I knew damn well it was me. Maya had a cavity filled and I sat in the waiting room with Tate watching YouTube videos of dump trucks. 5 minutes later, The judge read the order. Children will remain primarily with father during school days due to continuity of schedule. Mother will have Thursdays and alternating weekends. Nadia sat still. Didn't say a word, didn't blink. She just looked over at Vivon, who scribbled something angry into her notebook like she was writing her own judgment. I exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. Mara gave my arm a tap under the table. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded. We walked out into the hallway and I felt my hands again. It was like coming back from a long drive and finally parking the truck. Then just before we reached the elevator, I felt a shoulder brush mine. I turned and saw Landon standing there in a gray button-up like he thought he belonged in the building. "This won't stand," he said real low. I looked down at his shoes. Scuffed boots, bad laces. That was the only reason I didn't say what I wanted to say. Instead, I turned to Mara. "Let's go." Back at the apartment that evening, Maya asked if she could put her old soccer medal on the wall above her bed. I helped her find a thumbtack and stood on a kitchen chair while she directed where it should go. "You bet," I said. "Right here." "A little higher," she said. "There." "Perfect." That night, I slept. Really slept. First time in weeks, it wasn't just dozing with one eye open, heart pounding. It felt like someone had finally turned off the generator in the back of my skull that had been humming nonstop since I walked out of that house. 2 days later, I walked outside to find a line carved into the side of my truck. Deep, angry, all the way from fender to tailgate like someone keyed it with a purpose. I didn't panic, didn't lose my head. I took 7 photos, different angles, time-stamped. Then I filed a report at the station and printed 2 copies for Mara. Cost me $48 at the junkyard offspur to replace the busted handle they'd yanked half off. I didn't claim it on insurance. I didn't want to give anyone an excuse to say I couldn't afford to maintain my vehicle. Marlo looked at the pictures and said, "Add it to the file. Stay clean." No reaction. Let them keep stepping in their own mess. So I did. I took the kids to the library that weekend, let Maya pick 3 chapter books. Kate picked a DVD with trains and nothing else. We got ice cream afterward and sat on the curb outside 7-Eleven like we didn't have court hearings on the calendar and threats in our inbox. That Monday, I called the court clerk and confirmed the property hearing date. August 6th, 11 weeks away. Felt like a year. I hung up, looked around the apartment, messy, cramped, loud with kid energy, and thought, okay, I can hold the line. It was the last Thursday in June. Sun dragging long across the pavement, air thick like it was holding its breath. I was carrying groceries up the stairs, one paper bag tucked under my arm, milk sweating through the handle, when I saw it. Note taped to my front door, sharp black ink, crooked handwriting. No name, no signature, just meet me. 8:30 p.m. Harold's on Trent. Come alone. I stood there holding that piece of paper, heart already beating faster, wondering what kind of stunt this was. I thought about tossing it, thought about ignoring it. But something about the handwriting, about the come alone part, made my stomach twist. I put the milk away, told the sitter I'd be back in 2 hours, and drove out to Harold's just before dark. It was the kind of place that still had ashtrays even though nobody smoked anymore. Booths cracked from years of elbows, wait staff that didn't ask questions they didn't want real answers to. I slid into my usual booth in the back. Waitress brought me a coffee without asking. "Your friend coming?" "We'll see," I said. He showed at 8:42. Hat pulled low like he was trying to dodge a camera that wasn't there. I saw him spot me, hesitate, then walk over like every step was work. Landon slid into the booth across from me and kept his eyes on the table. "She told me it was over," he said, voice low, almost that she'd left you for good, that we were starting a life. I didn't say a word. "Then last week," he went on. "She said, the baby might be yours again, switched it like a channel." I stared at him, letting silence fill the space he didn't have the balls to occupy. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old phone. Not his current one. Some beat-up Android with a cracked screen. He slid it across the table. "She had me help fake the door photo," he said. "Told me if you looked dangerous, the judge would kick you out of the house. Said it was just temporary." I unlocked the screen. His hands didn't move. There were messages, screenshots, texts between him and Nadia, between Nadia and Vivon. Lines like, "If he thinks the kids aren't safe, he'll sign. Pressure works. He's prideful, but not stupid. Use the test. He's terrified of losing them." And then a voice memo. Nadia laughing. I played it with the volume low, but it still landed like a dropped wrench. "He'll sign if we dangle the kids long enough. He's all bark." I stopped it halfway through. My ears were hot. I felt that kind of rage that starts in the neck and moves up into your jaw. The kind that makes you forget you're in public. I flattened my hands on the table and looked at Landon for the first time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm not proud," he said. "I'm sick over it." I told her I was done and she turned cold like I didn't matter. "If I get subpoenaed, I'll go. I'll testify. Whatever you need." "Why now?" I asked. He finally looked up. His face looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Because she's not leaving him either," he said. "I'm the other guy now." That sat between us like a rotting fish. He didn't offer excuses. I didn't ask for any. We just sat there while the waitress dropped the check face down and walked away like she knew better. I didn't finish the coffee. I didn't touch the receipt. I just walked out and texted Mara from the parking lot. "He'll testify. He's got recordings and messages. We'll bring the phone." I didn't even wait for a reply. Just drove back home in silence. That night, I laid in bed staring at the ceiling. No TV, no white noise, no hum of traffic, just silence and the realization that the worst parts of the last 3 months weren't even the betrayal. It was how much energy I'd spent trying to stay decent while they played dirty. I wasn't happy. I wasn't vindicated. I wasn't even angry anymore. Just tired. Tired in a way that went all the way down to the bones. 3 days later, I got home from picking up a gallon of milk and found the front window to the apartment cracked open a half-inch. Not broken, not smashed, just lifted like someone had used a screwdriver on the lock. Inside, nothing was stolen. Nothing was broken, but the kids' dresser drawers had been opened. Tate's socks on the floor. Maya's journal flipped open to a random page and left that way. It was just messed with. I called the landlord. Filed a report, then fixed the latch myself, drilled in a new one, slid a broomstick into the window track, and moved both kids' beds to the far wall just in case someone ever tried again. That night, I sat at the edge of the bed while they slept and told myself I was going to make it to August 6th. Didn't matter what else happened. That court date was the line I was holding, the only one that mattered. And this time, I wasn't walking in there with just notes and binders. I had ammunition. August 6th arrived like a court summons. I'd been counting down to it for 11 weeks. But when that morning came, it still felt like stepping into a headwind. Courtroom 3B, 9 a.m. sharp. Property division, debts, assets, who keeps what? I'd already made peace with half the house in my truck. I wasn't there to win. I was there to finish. Nadia showed up 10 minutes late, white dress again, same as the last hearing. Maybe she thought it made her look pure. Vivian was right behind her, stiff-backed and smug. And her younger sister, Kelsey, came along, too. Kelsey glared at me like I'd kicked her dog. I hadn't spoken to her since Thanksgiving 3 years back, and even then, she'd been hard to like. Mara sat next to me with a banker's box under the table and a small smile. Quiet, confident. I could tell by the way she kept flipping her pen that she'd finally lined everything up exactly how she wanted it. The judge started reading through the file, listing our life like an itemized grocery receipt. 1,740 feet ranch home in Spokane Valley, he read, 2 vehicles, joint savings, and a 401k valued at approximately $43,000. My 401k looked like a dying house plant, but it was mine. Nadia's lawyer went first. He was smooth. I'll give him that. Words polished to a shine. All about fairness and equity. Said I should buy Nadia out at an updated market valuation, which meant wildly inflated, or just surrender the house altogether. Vivon nodded along like she was agreeing to pie prices at a church bake sale. I almost laughed. Mara didn't move until he sat down. Then she stood slow and steady and said, "Your Honor, before we discuss valuations, we'd like to call a witness." The judge raised a brow. "Proceed." "Mr. Landon Puett." The back door opened, and I swear you could feel the air leave Nadia's side of the room. Vivon's exhale sounded like a tire losing air. Kelsey whispered something sharp that made Nadia's shoulders tighten. Landon walked in. Same hat, same boots, no swagger left in him. He took the stand without looking my way. The clerk swore him in, voice echoing off the wood panels. Mara started calm. "Mr. Puett, can you tell the court how you're acquainted with both parties?" He nodded. "Nadia is my cousin by marriage. Trent's my cousin by blood. And were you involved in any communications concerning the respondent's character or actions during this divorce?" He swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. Nadia and Vivian asked me to help create evidence that would make Trent look unstable. I took a photo of a wall she said he'd punched. It wasn't true. She'd asked me to." Nadia shifted in her seat. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, whispering fast. Mara went on, steady as ever. Did you also participate in discussions regarding Mr. Douglas's parenting or property decisions? Landon nodded again. They talked about using the kids. Said he'd sign if we dangled them long enough. Nadia said that herself. I got it recorded. He reached into his jacket and held up his old phone. Mara took it, plugged it into a little speaker, and hit play. Nadia's voice filled the courtroom, laughing, confident, ugly. He'll sign if we scare him enough. No one spoke. You could have heard the clock tick. I didn't look at her. I just stared at the grain of the table in front of me and thought, there it is, the whole damn truth. Landon kept going. He said the pregnancy was almost certainly his. Said she'd lied to both of us at different times. Said Vivian had helped write some of the fake text messages that made me look threatening. Vivon's pen stopped moving. Nadia's nails went dead quiet against the table. The judge didn't interrupt, just listened. Chin resting on his hand like he'd been expecting this all along. When it ended, Mara handed over printouts, timestamps, my February patchwork photos, the keyed truck, the police report about the break-in, a full record, clean and organized, like she'd built a wall out of facts they couldn't climb over. Nadia tried to speak then, mouth open like she had one more lie left in her. Her lawyer put a firm hand on her wrist and whispered something sharp. She shut her mouth. The judge leaned back, took off his glasses, and said, I'm making an adverse credibility finding on Mother. His tone was flat, final. You could almost hear Vivian's pulse from across the aisle. Then he read the decision, slow and deliberate. The residence will be refinanced or sold within 120 days. Equity will be divided 60-40 in favor of father due to misconduct by mother. He kept going. Vehicles will remain with current possessors. Shared debts will be allocated 70% to mother's side given evidence of a cash advance taken in March for $5,800 without joint consent. That one landed like a brick. I hadn't even known about that cash advance. Mara must have found it in the disclosures. Vivon started to stand up, clutching her purse like she was leaving early. The bailiff said, Ma'am, please stay seated. She sat. I didn't look at any of them. Didn't gloat. Didn't need to. I just nodded once. Quiet. Done. When the gavel hit, it didn't sound like victory. It just sounded like an ending. The Tuesday after the hearing, I called the loan officer Mara recommended and started the refinance paperwork. It dragged through September like wet laundry, but by early December, the house was in my name. Payment landed at $1,432 a month. Tight, but manageable if I stayed under budget and didn't touch the credit cards. Mara looked at the numbers and said, let's not overreach. Keep your budget boring. Boring's the goal, I told her. I moved the kids back in a week before Christmas. Maya stepped inside and looked around like she didn't quite believe it. Same kitchen, same floor creak by the hallway light switch, same living room window that fogged up in the morning, but it felt different. It felt like mine. I gave Maya first pick on bedroom color. She chose this soft green from a paint chip at Lowe's and stood in the doorway supervising while I rolled it on. She said it made the room feel like a garden. Tate insisted his room be just trucks. No color, just trucks. I bought a cheap border sticker set online and wrapped dump trucks and cement mixers around the top edge of the walls. By late January, Nadia had the baby, a boy. She didn't call. Didn't ask if I wanted to know the name or come see him. I found out from a neighbor who saw the car seat in her back seat and asked if we were adding to the family. I sent a text that night. Hope the baby's healthy. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. That same week, Landon sent a short message, just one line. I'm moving to Pasco. Sorry for all of it. I didn't answer. Not to be cold. I just didn't have anything left to say to him. Whatever part of me used to care what he thought was gone. Like a tire that finally blew and didn't make a sound. Nadia's visitation started back up mid-February. Thursdays and every other weekend. The first Thursday she was 22 minutes late. No call, no text. Just pulled up and waved like she was early. I handed the kids their backpacks and didn't say a word. Just noted the time in my binder and shut the door. 2 weeks later, I ran into Mara at the grocery store near 29th, standing by the tortillas. We both reached for the same pack and laughed awkwardly like we weren't two people who dragged each other through 6 months of war. She nodded at my cart. Someone's cooking dinner. Trying, I said. Tate's on a chili kick. He eats like he's 30. We talked for a couple minutes. Nothing heavy. School supply prices, bad coffee, the way spoke and still couldn't decide if it was done snowing. I didn't bring up the case. Neither did she. A week later, after I dropped off my final check and the retainer was fully paid, I sent her a text. Would you ever want to grab a burger? Nothing formal, Just not here by the tortillas. She wrote back a few hours later after the decree's signed. Lines stay clean. That made sense, and it told me she wasn't just being polite. The final decree came through on October 28th. I got the email from the clerk, read it through twice, then printed it and tucked it in a folder I labeled Simply Done. That evening, I took the kids for hot chocolate at the park, and we walked the Centennial Trail till the sky turned this deep watercolor pink. Maya kicked at leaves. Tate asked if he could build a fort out of sticks and named it Fort Truck Planet. After they fell asleep, I sat on the couch and texted Mara. Decree's in. Burgers still stand. She replied 3 minutes later. Friday 6:30. I like onion rings. We went to this little place on Division. Greasy tables. Baseball game on a tiny screen. The kind of joint where the ketchup bottle always feels half warm. She ordered a bacon burger with extra pickles. I got the same just to keep it easy. We didn't talk about court. Didn't talk about Vivon or Landon or false claims. We talked about weird school fundraisers, the dog she wanted but hadn't gotten yet, and how Spoke and Rhodes felt like they were always mid-rep but never fixed. She told me she'd been divorced 4 years, no kids. Said she liked quiet and didn't trust people who bragged too much about how well they were moving on. When we walked out, the air was cold and clean. Fall slipping into something colder. Driving home, it hit me. I hadn't thought about Vivon once that day. No mental arguments, no imagined comebacks, not even the usual tension in my jaw. Just peace. The kind you don't recognize right away because it's been gone so long. Winter passed slow, then not at all. That's how it goes here. One day you're shoveling slush, the next you're sweeping pollen. I kept a snow shovel in the bed of my truck just in case, along with 2 pairs of backup gloves, one for each kid. I'd learned not to trust the weather or anything else that used to show up on schedule. In February, I saw Nadia at a gas station off Freya. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because I just picked up Tate from daycare and was running low on patience and fuel. She was standing by the pump in a coat that looked too thin for the wind. Her face looked worn, not just tired, old in a way she hadn't been before, like something had drained her from the inside out. She looked up and saw me. Didn't smile. Just nodded like we were neighbors, not exes with a war behind us. I walked over, stayed a couple feet back. "How's the baby?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "He's fine." She didn't say whose. I didn't ask. After a long pause, she looked down, then said, "I'm sorry." I just nodded. "I know." And that was it. That's all that needed saying out there in the wind with the pumps ticking behind us and sand kicking off the tires of every car that passed. No apology was going to fix what broke, but sometimes acknowledgement is enough. A week later, Maya brought home a science project about soil pH and asked if we could test dirt from the front yard. I bought a cheap kit at Home Depot, and we spent a Saturday comparing dry patches to the garden bed like it was NASA-level research. Tate learned to button his coat without help and wanted to show everyone, me, his teacher, even the checkout lady at Safeway. I showed both kids how to check the oil in the truck and where to find studs in the wall before you hang something heavy. Maya rolled her eyes at first, but got into it when I let her use the stud finder, and it beeped. Tate just kept calling it the wall beeper. Mara and I started seeing each other regular. We kept it slow. Not because we weren't sure, but because the kids were small and I didn't want to be dumb again. Not the way I'd been before. Love's easy when it's new. The real test is what it looks like on a Wednesday after a bad day at work and a spilled juice box on the couch. She learned that Tate could name every kind of dinosaur, but hated strawberries. She learned Maya secretly hated glitter and pretended to like it because Nadia always bought glittery stuff. I learned Mara burned pancakes every single time but made chili good enough to shut a room up. One night in March, I got a long text from Vivian. It read like a monologue, something about what families owe each other, how if we keep quiet long enough, people forget, and how children need unity more than victory. I didn't respond. I turned my phone face down and watched cartoons with Tate till he fell asleep in my lap, mouth open, one sock missing. In April, we packed sandwiches and juice boxes and drove out to Fish Lake for a picnic. Nothing fancy. Maya read her book in the grass. Tate threw sticks. Mara laid out a blanket and we counted red boats that passed on the water. Nobody talked about court. Nobody said the word custody. It was just a quiet afternoon that didn't ask anything of us except to be there. That night, after the kids went down, I pulled out the big envelope from the top of the closet, the one with the court transcripts, printouts, photos, and copies of every lie that had almost burned my life down. I put it all in a fireproof box, labeled it with the kids' names, and pushed it to the back of the closet. I'm not saving it to rehash the pain. I'm saving it in case they ever ask. I don't believe in big speeches. Not anymore. I believe in packing lunches, showing up on time, and telling the truth without dressing it up like a holiday. I lost a lot. No question about that. But I kept what mattered. And if there's any revenge worth anything, it's this. When I turn the porch light on at 8:02 p.m., I know exactly who I'm turning it on for. Story 3. My wife ignored my messages all day. At 11 p.m., she finally came home and smirked. You know what happened? I had a one-night stand with my boss and I'd do it again. I just nodded and finished my meal in silence. The next morning, when she woke up expecting coffee in bed, she got, you ever have one of those nights where your gut just knows something's off? Yeah, that was me sitting in my dimly lit kitchen at 10:58 p.m. poking at a plate of leftover fried rice like it had personally offended me. The clock above the stove ticked loud enough to double as a soundtrack for bad decisions. 11 hits and right on cue, I hear the front door open. Her heels started clicking down the hallway like an impatient metronome. Each step timed perfectly to announce, brace yourself. I'm about to ruin your week. She walked in like a movie villain who'd already practiced her monologue in the car. Same beige trench coat she always wore when she wanted to look important. The irony, it was the same one she wore the night she promised we'd always be honest with each other. Spoiler alert, she lied. Her eyes didn't even meet mine. They hovered somewhere above my head like I was furniture or worse, a subscription she'd been meaning to cancel. She tossed her purse on the counter, sighed dramatically, and I knew something theatrical was coming. Then came the smirk, the kind of half smile that should come with a warning label. You know what happened tonight? She said, her tone sharp, casual, cruel, like she was about to tell me my favorite show got canceled. I didn't answer, mostly because I was chewing, and because I wasn't sure which version of her I was dealing with, the drunk one, the guilt-ridden one, or the one who thought emotional warfare was foreplay. I had a one-night stand with my boss, she said like she was reciting the weather and I'd do it again. You could have dropped a feather in that kitchen and heard it echo. But me, I didn't do the whole dramatic fork drop thing like you see in movies. I didn't yell, throw plates, or faint into a conveniently placed couch. Nope. I just chewed my rice slowly like a monk meditating through a crisis. Each bite was a mix of soy sauce, betrayal, and the faint taste of my sanity trying to exit my body. Somewhere between bites 3 and 4, I swear I heard my dignity pack a suitcase. The thing is, when you've been married long enough, you learn to spot the exact second your relationship flatlines. Mine died somewhere between one night stand and I'd do it again. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded once. Not a dramatic nod. A small polite one. The kind that says, copy that. Message received. Enjoy the flames, sweetheart. It's the international sign for, oh, you messed up, but I'm too calm to make this fun for you. Apparently, she mistook that nod for weakness. Cute. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and smirked wider like she'd just won a prize for most honest villain of the year. You're not going to say anything? She asked, genuinely disappointed, as if she wanted a performance. Like I was supposed to give her the kind of meltdown that makes for good gossip later. Sorry, Belinda. Wrong audience. I was done auditioning for roles in your soap opera. I swallowed, took a sip of water, and said, congratulations. Just one word. The silence that followed, oh, it was delicious. You could almost hear her brain short-circuiting. She blinked a few times like she was trying to process whether I was being serious. I wasn't smiling, but I wasn't angry either. Just calm, which, trust me, scared her more. Calm men are dangerous. They're the ones who start planning. Her jaw tightened. You're not going to fight for me? She said, her voice shaky, confused, maybe even a little scared, like she'd expected fireworks and got a spreadsheet instead. Fight for what, Belinda? I asked, my tone even. You're moving in with your boss and pregnant with his child, not joining a pottery class. That landed like a punch she didn't see coming. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence stretched long enough to make both of us uncomfortable. Then she grabbed her phone, muttered something about needing space, and stomped off toward the bedroom. I didn't follow her, didn't beg, didn't ask questions. Instead, I sat there watching the condensation trail down my water glass like it had all the answers I needed. My brain was running faster than a caffeine-fueled accountant during tax season. I was angry, sure, but under that anger was something sharper. Focus. I looked at the leftover rice, then at the woman disappearing down the hall. And I swear I felt this strange sense of peace, like, yeah, this is it. The plot twist my therapist warned me about. And in that moment, as the door to our bedroom slammed, I mentally opened a brand new Excel sheet in my head and titled it Operation by Belinda. Column A, assets. Column B, passwords. Column C, exit strategy. I even gave it a color-coded format because if I was going to dismantle a marriage, I wanted it to look organized. I sat back, exhaled, and smiled. A real one this time. Not because I was happy, but because I knew something she didn't. Calm wasn't weakness. It was precision. She thought she'd just detonated a bomb. She didn't realize I was the guy who built the fallout shelter. She came back out a few minutes later, hair tied up, face freshly washed, wearing one of my t-shirts like she was auditioning for sympathy. "You're not saying anything," she muttered, almost defensive. "You don't even care." I shrugged. "Care is expensive. I'm saving mine for someone who deserves it." Her eyes narrowed. "You're unbelievable." "Funny," I said, standing up and collecting my plate. "That's what your boss probably said, too." That one hit. She huffed, stomped past me again, and slammed the bedroom door again. I rinsed my plate, loaded the dishwasher, and actually laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes when you've hit the point of no return, and suddenly feel lighter. Because honestly, what else is left to lose? I poured myself a drink, turned on the TV, and flipped through channels until I landed on one of those late-night infomercials about self-improvement. Some shiny teeth guy in a suit was saying, "Your life can change in one decision." I raised my glass to the screen and said, "Cheers to that, buddy." Around midnight, I heard her crying through the door. Not loud sobs, just that quiet, muffled kind that sounds like guilt trying to negotiate with pride. I didn't go in. I'd done that before. Comforted, consoled, believed. Not this time. That chapter was over. And for once, I was going to let the silence do the talking. I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and actually created that Excel sheet for real. Yeah, I'm that guy. Heartbroken, but efficient. I started listing every shared account, every asset, every subscription, Netflix, Spotify, the damn Costco card. If she was walking out, she wasn't walking out with the perks. By the time I was done, I'd mapped out a 12-step plan to reclaim my peace of mind and most of my furniture. It was therapeutic, like journaling, but with more formulas. At one point, I paused, staring at our wedding photo framed on the bookshelf. We looked happy, two idiots grinning at a future that apparently came with fine print. I walked over, picked it up, and set it face down. Not out of anger, just closure. That version of us didn't exist anymore. And honestly, good riddance. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I missed the days when quiet meant peace, not aftermath. But then, somewhere between the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of that damn wall clock, something in me settled. The ache didn't vanish, but it stopped screaming. That's when I realized maybe this wasn't the end of my life. Maybe it was the start of my rebranding arc. I sat on the couch. Milo the dog, my only reliable roommate, jumped up beside me, his head tilting like he was asking, "We good, man?" I scratched behind his ears and said, "Better than ever, buddy. We're downsizing drama." He wagged his tail, which I took as emotional support. The next morning, I'd probably have to face her again. Pretend to coexist while pretending not to see her texts from Mr. Bossman. But tonight, I let myself breathe. I'd survived the confession. The bomb went off and I was still standing barefoot, bruised ego, but standing. As I turned off the lights, and headed to bed on the couch, obviously, I muttered to myself, "You did good, man." Because sometimes surviving is enough. I pulled a blanket over myself, stared at the ceiling, and smiled one last time. Not because of her, because of what she'd just given me. Clarity, motivation, and the rarest gift of all, a clean break disguised as betrayal. And right before sleep took over, I thought about how tomorrow would go. She'd probably wake up pretending nothing happened. Maybe she'd make coffee. Maybe she'd try to act normal. But I knew better. The moment she confessed, she set off a countdown she didn't even know existed. Day 1 of Operation Bye Bye Belinda had officially begun. And damn, it was going to be beautiful. Morning sunlight used to mean something peaceful. Fresh starts, new chances, the smell of coffee, the illusion that life wasn't a complete circus. Not today. The sunlight crawling through my blinds felt judgmental, like even nature was in on the gossip. I woke up on the couch, neck sore, dignity bruised, and the faint echo of last night's. I slept with my boss still buzzing like a mosquito in my skull. You know what's funny? Betrayal doesn't wake you up with a slap. It wakes you up with clarity and a cramp. I rolled over, groaned, and checked the clock. 7:13 a.m. I had exactly 47 minutes before she emerged from the bedroom, pretending life was normal. So, I did what any emotionally stable, freshly betrayed husband would do. I made coffee strong enough to file for divorce on its own. The sound of the coffee maker sputtering filled the kitchen. That smell, normally my favorite, hit different. This wasn't comfort. This was caffeine for war. I stood there in my boxers and an old t-shirt that said, "World's okayest husband." The irony stung and then I heard it. Her voice, that familiar, casual tone like she hadn't detonated my evening 12 hours earlier. "Coffee, please," she called out, stretching her syllables like I was her personal barista in this emotional Starbucks we apparently lived in. Usually, I'd bring it to her with foam art, maybe a dumb heart shape on top, because I used to believe in trying. I'd even drop a kiss on her forehead like an idiot who thought loyalty was a team sport. Not today. Today, I stood in the doorway sipping my own cup, smiling like a man who'd just discovered the Wi-Fi password to freedom. She looked at me from the bed, hair messy, face unbothered, like betrayal was part of her skincare routine. "Coffee?" she asked again, impatient. "Oh," I said, tilting my head. "You mean the one-night stand special? Comes black, bitter, and served cold." The way her eyes blinked once, twice, confusion blooming like a bad rash was pure art. She actually had the nerve to look offended. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took another slow sip because timing matters in these things. "I think you know, Belinda, unless amnesia was part of the pillow talk," she frowned, sitting up, clutching the blanket like it could hide her shame. "You're still mad about last night?" I raised an eyebrow. "Still, you confessed to cheating, bragged you'd do it again, and went to bed like you just finished reading a bedtime story." "So, yeah, still might be understating it," she huffed, brushing her hair back. "I was drunk, right?" I said, nodding. "Because tequila makes you honest, not creative. You didn't invent that story. You just lost the ability to filter it." For a second, she looked guilty. Then, like clockwork came the deflection. "You've been distant lately, always working. You made me feel neglected." Ah, there it was. The classic villain monologue. "You made me cheat." I almost clapped. "I'm sorry," I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't realize loyalty was something you canceled when the Wi-Fi got slow." She glared, but I didn't stop. "You felt neglected, so your solution was to play Twister with your boss. Genius. What's next? Rob a bank because you felt underpaid?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being childish." "Childish?" I laughed. "No, childish is eating cookies before dinner. I'm being factual." I walked over to the counter, poured her a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and carried it back, setting it down with a smile so polite it should have been illegal. "Here," I said, "your morning dose of consequences." She stared at the cup like it might bite her. "What's your problem, Belinda?" I said, leaning on the door frame. "My problem is I used to think we were a team. Turns out I was playing basketball while you were interviewing for the other side's cheer squad." Her lip trembled for half a second. Then she recovered, grabbed the cup, and took a sip just to prove a point. I swear the bitterness hit her soul. She set it down fast. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, "I'm being honest. You should try it. I hear it's trending this season." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The kind of silence that doesn't need words because the air is already screaming. She tried to hold my gaze, but guilt's heavy. Eventually, she looked away. "I made a mistake," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Just one, because that's not how you described it last night." That one landed. Her shoulders tensed and she started fiddling with the blanket again. "Can we not do this first thing in the morning?" "Oh, sorry," I said. Mock apologetic. "I didn't realize betrayal had office hours," she scowled. "You're an ass." "Thank you," I said, sipping again. "Took years of marriage to earn that title." She swung her legs out of bed, clearly done with my entire existence. "I don't have time for this," she muttered, heading toward the bathroom. "Of course not," I said. "You've got to get to work. Wouldn't want to keep your boss waiting." Her hand froze on the door handle. Bingo. She turned around, fire in her eyes. "You're not funny." "Oh, I disagree," I said, grinning. "I'm hilarious. You just lost your sense of humor around the same time you lost your moral compass." She disappeared into the bathroom, slamming the door. The sound echoed through the house, but it didn't shake me. I felt good. Not healed, not happy, but powerful, like a man who'd stopped drowning, and realized he could stand up in the water the whole time. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and laughed when I saw her meal prepped lunches neatly stacked on the top shelf. All those color-coded containers for a woman who couldn't organize her conscience. I pulled one out, labeled Tuesday tuna salad, and fed it to Milo, who wagged his tail like he'd just inherited wealth. "Enjoy it, buddy," I said. "You're eating guilt-free." The rest of the morning was quiet. Too quiet. She got dressed in silence, doing that thing where she pretends to be mad to cover up being caught. Every move she made screamed, "I'm the victim here." She grabbed her purse, avoided eye contact, and headed for the door. "Hey," I said as she reached for the handle. She paused. "What? You forgot something?" She turned, confused. I lifted her empty coffee mug. "Your cup? Thought you might want to take it with you." Symbolic, since it's as empty as your apologies. Her mouth fell open. No words, no defense. Just one sharp exhale through her nose before she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. And just like that, I was alone. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It hummed. The air felt lighter. My kitchen wasn't a crime scene anymore. It was the headquarters for Operation Bye Bye Belinda. I cleaned the mug she didn't drink from, wiped the counter, and caught my reflection in the window. I looked tired, sure, but there was something else there, too. Focus. The kind that comes when a storm clears and you can finally see the wreckage you're going to rebuild from. I picked up my phone, opened a note, and started typing. Phase 1, mental detachment complete. Phase 2, information gathering in progress. Phase 3, legal execution pending. Yeah, it was dramatic, but so was she, and I was done being the supporting character in her show. I spent the rest of the morning doing little acts of quiet rebellion. Cancelled her streaming subscriptions. Changed the Netflix password from Belinda Baby to Try Again Liar 123. Unlin her Amazon account. Even changed the smart tone voice to male and renamed it Karma. So now whenever she'd say Alexa, the voice would respond, "I think you mean consequences." It was petty. Beautifully petty. Around 10 a.m. Tara called. "Hey man, how's married life?" He asked, clueless. "Defunct," I said. "What?" "Yeah." I sighed, stirring my now cold coffee. Turns out my wife's extracurriculars include networking. Horizontally. There was a long pause. Then Tar whistled. "Damn, bro. You good?" I chuckled. "Define good." "I'm emotionally homeless but financially awake." "That's dark," he said. "You want me to come by?" "Nah," I said. "I've got this. I'm starting my new side hustle, revenge, but make it subtle." He laughed. "Only you would turn betrayal into a project plan." "Of course," I said. "Heartbreak's just rebranding with more paperwork." After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling something weirdly close to excitement. My marriage might have imploded, but my sense of humor thriving. By noon, she texted, "We need to talk tonight." I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. "Sorry, busy making coffee for someone faithful." Petty, absolutely satisfying, beyond measure. I set my phone down, poured another cup for myself, and raised it in a toast to the quiet. "Here's to mornings without pretending," I said aloud. Milo barked like he agreed. And for the first time in months, my coffee didn't taste bitter. It tasted like freedom. If you told me a month ago that my post-breakup coping mechanism would involve Excel, I would have laughed in your face. But there I was, a day after Belinda's morning performance of Coffee, Please, sitting in my home office in pajamas, drinking cold brew out of a whiskey glass, creating what might be the most emotionally satisfying spreadsheet ever conceived. While she was at work, or whatever she was calling her extracurricular activities these days, I began my new favorite hobby, data collection. Forget yoga, meditation, or journaling. Revenge organization therapy. That was my jam. I opened my laptop, cracked my knuckles, and titled a new document. Operation Bye Bye Belinda, Assets, Accounts, and Annihilation. Column A, Accounts. Column B, Passwords. Column C, Transfer Status. Column D, Emotional Damage Level. I wasn't crying, I was auditing. C, Belinda always said I had control issues. What she didn't realize was that control is just responsibility with better branding. So, while she was out building her career, practicing workplace betrayal, I was building my firewall. My first stop, joint bank accounts. I logged in, changed the password from Love Wins 2020 to Karma Wins 2025 and set up notifications for any transaction above $5. I also might have renamed the savings account from Vacation Goals to You Played Yourself. Then came insurance policies, life, car, health, you name it. I dug through drawers like a detective in a Netflix series called CSI, Marriage Fraud. By the time I found her hidden folder labeled Private Docs, I was practically humming. Inside were old receipts, tax forms, and a love note from 2018 that read, "We'll always be each other's person." I stared at it for a second, laughed and said, guess she outsourced that position. Then I fed it to the shredder. Therapy in motion. But the real joy came when I got to the passwords. Oh, the passwords. I had every single one stored in a secure manager because unlike Belinda, I don't trust easily. I printed the list, highlighted the ones I planned to change, and labeled them like trophies. Netflix done. Amazon done. Spotify access revoked. Enjoy ads, trader email. Oh, this one was fun. I set an auto reply that said, this inbox no longer accepts messages from cheaters or clowns. I even added a small formula at the top of the sheet. Equals if Belinda equals honest miracle expected outcome. I sat back, sipped my coffee, and smiled. Revenge wasn't loud. Revenge was neat. Around noon, I texted my best friend, Tar. Now, Tar's the kind of guy who believes that every emotional problem can be solved with either encryption or tacos. He's an IT consultant by day and a chaos enthusiast by night. I sent him a simple message. Need your help securing my emotional assets? He replied in 10 seconds. You're finally hacking her. No, I wrote, just locking down everything before she gets creative. So, digital divorce prep. Exactly. Operation Bye Bye Belinda. I'll bring my laptop and queso. By 3:00 p.m., Tar was in my living room barefoot eating chips on my couch while scanning through my laptop like it was a hostage situation. Man, he said between bites. You're turning heartbreak into a business plan. Of course, I said deadpan. Divorce is just emotional rebranding. I'm pivoting. He laughed so hard he almost spilled salsa on my keyboard. You're serious completely. I'm done crying. I'm spreadsheeting my feelings. He gave me a look that said, you've lost it, but I respect it. Then he started coding. I can set up two-step verification for everything. Want me to block her devices from logging in? Absolutely, I said. If she wants Wi-Fi, she can ask her boss for the password. While he typed, I scrolled through her Instagram out of morbid curiosity. New post, a flat lay of coffee, croissant, and a caption that read, self-care isn't selfish. I laughed so loud. Milo barked. Self-care girl. You're the reason therapists have job security. Tar leaned over. Oh, she posted. Let me see. He looked at the photo, squinted, and said, bro, that's the same bracelet you bought her for your anniversary. I stared. Oh my god, she accessorized infidelity. Want to hack her account? He asked casually. I grinned. Tempting. But no, we're not playing dirty. We're playing smart, right? He said, smart revenge. Got it. For the next few hours, we worked like accountants on caffeine and spite. We backed up every financial document, cross-referenced property deeds, even took screenshots of her online purchases because nothing says betrayal like buying lingerie during a recession. By sunset, I had a color-coded system that could have impressed the IRS. Green meant secured, yellow meant pending, red meant lawyer time. I sat back, exhausted but proud. It's beautiful, I said, staring at the screen like Michelangelo admiring the Sistine Chapel. Hark nodded. You've officially weaponized Excel. Heartbreak requires structure, I said. He laughed. Man, you're going to turn this into a TED Talk. Title, How to Monetize Betrayal, A Journey in Conditional Formatting. We clinkinked our coffee mugs in a toast. That night after Tar left, I sat alone with my masterpiece of a spreadsheet glowing softly on the screen. Each cell represented control, closure, and a little bit of vengeance. I even added a note at the bottom that read, she thought I'd crumble. Joke's on her. I calculate. I printed a copy for safekeeping, slipped it into a folder, and placed it in the drawer next to our marriage certificate, which now felt like a warranty that had expired early. Then just for fun, I opened the bank app again. Her latest transaction popped up. $87.50 Wine Loft Bar and Lounge. I smiled. Oh, you're still at it. I didn't feel jealous, not even mad, just strategic because if she thought she was the only one capable of surprises, she clearly never met me mid-motivation. I started researching divorce attorneys, landed on a name that sounded like she charged by the ounce of confidence. Mrs. is Delgado Escu. Her website tagline read, don't get everything. I bookmarked it, poured another drink and leaned back in my chair feeling something close to peace. Revenge wasn't chaos, it was math, and I was damn good at math. By midnight I had my plan neatly stored in both physical and digital form, password protected, cloud backed, and printed on premium paper because if I was going to burn down a marriage I wanted it to look professional. I sat there in the glow low of the laptop screen. Milo curled up by my feet and realized something that actually made me laugh out loud. She thought she'd broken me. But what she'd really done was wake me up. I looked at my reflection in the dark window and said to myself, "Congratulations, Belinda. You just turned a man into an organized hurricane." Then I shut down the laptop, patted Milo on the head, and whispered, "Revenge may be slow, buddy, but it autosaves." When people imagine hiring a divorce lawyer, they picture dramatic phone calls, boxes of tissues, maybe a playlist titled Heartbreak and Chardonnay. Me, I walked into Mrs. Delgado's law office like I was clocking in for a board meeting. I didn't want pity. I wanted precision. I didn't need therapy. I needed a woman who saw a marriage not as sacred, but as a contract that could be dissolved faster than bleach on a red wine stain. Mrs. Delgado didn't disappoint. Her office smelled like victory and lavender sanitizer. Diplomas lined the wall, each one basically screaming, "I've ruined happier couples than yours." She was in her 50s, silver hair cut sharp enough to slice egos, wearing a suit that looked like it came with its own legal precedent. The second she shook my hand, I knew Belinda was in trouble. Her grip was firm, her nails immaculate, and her eyes carried the kind of confidence you only get from winning arguments against men twice your size and IQ. "So, Mr. Carver," she said, settling behind her desk. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out the juicy parts. I bill by the hour, but I enjoy good storytelling." I smiled. "You'll get a bestseller." "My wife confessed she had a one-night stand with her boss recently," she asked, pen poised like a dagger. "Last week, right before bedtime." "Great timing, really. Nothing like ruining sleep and trust in one sentence." Mrs. Delgado nodded sympathetically, but smirked just slightly. "And you have proof?" "Oh," I said, leaning forward with the confidence of a man who'd already built a case stronger than Starbucks coffee. "Mrs. Delgado, I have more documentation than the IRS." Her eyebrows lifted. "Show me." I opened my laptop, clicked the folder labeled Exhibit Belinda, and turned the screen toward her. She scrolled through bank statements, texts, and photos with the enthusiasm of a woman watching her favorite courtroom drama. "Oh, she's done," she said finally. "This is like watching a cat bring a bird home and pretending it's a gift." "I want it handled cleanly," I said. "No yelling, no chaos, just paperwork and poetic justice." Her lips curved into a satisfied smile. "I like your style, Mr. Carver. Calm vengeance is my favorite flavor." For the next hour, we quietly rearranged my life like we were redecorating after a flood. House title under my name only, legally transferred through a quiet amendment she drafted before it even finished explaining. Joint accounts locked. Cards flagged for suspicious activity. Mrs. Delgado typed so fast it sounded like vengeance had a soundtrack. "Your wife's about to learn," she said. "That silence isn't forgiveness, it's strategy." I nodded. "I just want to protect what's mine and maybe give karma a little nudge." "Consider it done," she said. "You'll sign papers today. I'll file by morning, and by the time she realizes what's happening, she'll be swiping a decline card at Target." Music to my ears. By the time I left her office, I felt 10 pounds lighter, and not just emotionally. It's amazing how freeing it feels to turn heartbreak into logistics. I drove home, windows down, wind in my face, blasting, "We Are the Champions." Because irony is a coping mechanism. When I got home, I made myself a sandwich, sat at the kitchen table, and just admired my work. The silence in the house didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. Then my phone buzzed. "Belinda. Hey, why is my car not working?" I stared at the screen, chewed my sandwich slowly, and smiled. Then I typed back. "Maybe it's seeing other people." Read at 6:17 p.m. No reply. I laughed out loud. Even Milo looked impressed. "Don't look at me like that, buddy." I told him, "You'd do the same if you had thumbs." A few minutes later, she called. I didn't pick up. I wanted her to marinate. 10 minutes after that, another text. "Belinda, I'm trying to buy groceries." "What's going on?" "Me? Maybe karma's cutting carbs." I tossed my phone aside and poured myself a drink. God, it felt good. Not cruel, just balanced. The universe had been tipping in her favor for too long, and I was just redistributing resources. Around 8, Tara called. "You sound happy," he said suspiciously. "I met Delgado," I said. "The lawyer?" "Yeah, she's like if Judge Judy and Wonder Woman had a love child," he laughed. "That good?" "She reorganized my financial life in an hour. I feel spiritually audited." He whistled. "So, what's next now?" I said, leaning back. "Now I wait. Delgado's filing the paperwork, locking down the rest of the accounts, and I'm sitting here watching justice slow cook." He chuckled. "Damn, you really went full spreadsheet on this." "Of course," I said, "if she can multitask between lies, I can multitask between revenge and meal prep. He laughed harder. You're sick, man. I prefer methodical. We hung up after a few jokes about Belinda's inevitable meltdown. I poured another drink and flipped on the TV, but I couldn't focus. My phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification. Curiosity 1. I hit play. Her voice small and tight. Oliver, please call me. My card got declined at the pharmacy. I needed to pick up something important. I smirked. Hope it was humility. I didn't call back. I didn't even feel bad. This was the woman who'd looked me in the eye and confessed her affair like she was reading a grocery list. She'd earned this little inconvenience. The next morning, I met with Mrs. Delgado again to sign final documents. She had a file thicker than a Bible, neatly tabbed and labeled. All you need to do, she said, sliding it across, is sign here, here, and here. And congratulations, Mr. Carver. You're about to become independently unbothered. I signed each page with the satisfaction of a man autographing his own comeback story. When I was done, she said, now, one last thing. Do you want to freeze her access to the joint car lease? I grinned. Absolutely. Let's see how her boss likes playing chauffeur, she chuckled, tapping a few keys. Done. Anything else? I thought about it, then asked, can we flag her credit for a review? Mrs. Delgado's grin widened. We can absolutely do that. God, I love this woman. As I was leaving, she said, you're handling this remarkably well. Organization is cheaper than therapy, I said, that earned me a laugh. Driving home, I passed Belinda's office. Big glass building full of people pretending to love spreadsheets and pretending not to gossip. For a second, I thought about walking in, giving her boss a polite nod, and saying, thanks for the free motivation. But I had bigger plans. This wasn't about confrontation anymore. This was chess, not checkers. I stopped at a coffee shop instead, got my usual black, and sat by the window. I started sketching out my next move. If Mrs. Delgado was the attorney of destruction, I needed her counterpart, the accountant of ascension. Someone to help me rebuild smarter, richer, and legally bulletproof. Enter Marcus Chun, CPA and part-time miracle worker. Tar referred me, said the guy makes the IRS blush. I called him that afternoon. Marcus Chun, he answered, voice smooth, calm, like a financial therapist. Hi, I said. I'm looking for help untangling some joint finances divorce. You're good. He chuckled. I'm better than good. I'm efficient. Send me everything. I emailed him the spreadsheet from Operation Bye Bye Belinda. He called back in 10 minutes. Sir, he said, odd. This isn't immaculate. You categorized emotional damage levels. I shrugged, though he couldn't see it. Helps with perspective. He laughed. I'll handle the financial transfers. You handle not texting your ex? Deal, I said. 2 professionals, one in law, one in numbers, were now handling my cleanup. And me, I just had to sit back and sip coffee like a man watching karma hit its milestones. By evening, Delgado emailed. Filed and confirmed. Expect updates within 72 hours. 3 days. In 3 days, my life would be officially Belinda-free. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I realized I hadn't checked her social media all day. That was progress. I didn't need to see her filtered healing journey. I was living mine unfiltered and tax-deductible. At 9:42 p.m., another text came through. Belinda, I don't know what's happening, but this is cruel. I looked at the message for a long second, then typed. It's not cruelty, Belinda. It's closure spelled correctly for once. Send. I turned off my phone, leaned back in my chair, and let the quiet settle. Mrs. Delgado was right. Silence isn't forgiveness. It's strategy, and damn, was mine working beautifully. A week later, Belinda claimed she had a late meeting. Cute. That phrase had become the national anthem of cheating spouses everywhere. Late meeting translates to, I'm about to betray you. In high definition. She said it with her usual fake casual tone, wearing that tight black dress that used to be reserved for anniversaries, not accounting discussions. She spritzed perfume like she was prepping for battle, then leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. I caught a whiff of betrayal disguised as Chanel. Don't wait up, she said. I won't, I replied, smiling just enough to make her wonder if I knew something. Because I did. See, I'm not the jealous type. I'm the data collection type. When your wife cheats with her boss, emotions are pointless. Excel sheets and strategy. That's where the power is. So, when she left, I finished my sandwich, poured another cup of coffee, and activated Phase 4 of Operation Bye Bye Belinda, the stakeout. I wasn't doing it out of obsession. I was doing it for closure and maybe evidence. Because when you're dealing with someone who lies professionally, screenshots are the only language they understand. Now, a man in my position doesn't just follow his cheating wife in his own car. No, that's amateur hour. I rented a gray sedan from Hertz, the kind of car that screams divorced accountant with nothing left to lose. I even wore a baseball cap and hoodie. I looked like the human version of background noise. As I sat in that rental, parked a block from her office, I realized how absurd it all was. Me, a grown man, watching my wife's workplace like I was in some off-brand spy movie. But then, at exactly 6:42 p.m., the office door opened, and there she was, my soon-to-be ex walking out with her boss, the man himself, Mr. Forehead Shine 30,000. Let me describe this dude. Picture a middle-aged man with a hairline retreating faster than his morals, wearing a suit that cost too much to cover so little integrity. His laugh was loud, fake, and probably flammable. They were talking too close. You know, the kind of close that makes you want to liao your soul. Yeah, that they crossed the street, his hand, accidentally brushing her back like she was a malfunctioning printer. He was trying to reset. I clenched my jaw, not out of rage, but out of second-hand embarrassment. Watching them flirt was like watching two raccoons fight over a shiny trash can. They got into his car, a silver Lexus that screamed midlife crisis, and drove off. I followed at a respectable distance because, again, I'm not reckless, I'm strategic. They headed downtown, right into the heart of temptation, the Ember Lounge, a bar so pretentious it served artisanal ice. I parked 2 blocks away, walked in like I belonged there, and found a spot in the corner booth. I ordered a drink. I didn't even want something with an umbrella and too much sugar because blending in requires sacrifice. And there they were sitting at the bar like 2 rom-com extras who hadn't read the part where everything goes wrong. She laughed loudly. The kind of laugh she hadn't used around me in months. That hurt for about 3 seconds before I realized something. She was performing overcompensating. Guilt has a laugh track and hers was on full volume. I took out my phone, opened the camera app, and started recording photos, videos, timestamps. Each one labeled in my notes like Netflix episodes. Episode 1, Corporate Affairs. Episode 2, The Bonus, She Didn't Earn. Episode 3, HR's Worst Nightmare. I zoomed in just as he leaned closer, his hand brushing her thigh. I swear I could hear the distant sound of Karma warming up its engines. At one point, she whispered something into his ear, and he laughed so hard he almost spilled his drink. I didn't know what she said, but it was probably something poetic like, "My husband still thinks meetings end after 5. My drink arrived. I raised a glass in a mock toast to myself. "Here's to loyalty," I muttered, taking a sip. It tasted like lies and lime. I watched them for an hour. 1 hour of hand-holding, whispering, and touching that made me want to Clorox my memory. Around 9:15, they finally stood up. She adjusted her dress. He adjusted his ego, and they headed out. I paid the bill, left a generous tip because I'm petty, not cheap, and followed them at a safe distance. They didn't go back to the office. They didn't even pretend to. Instead, they went straight to the parking garage next door where I caught them kissing under a flickering light. It looked less like romance and more like an HR complaint waiting to happen. I recorded everything. Every kiss, every touch, every bad decision illuminated by that one stubborn fluorescent bulb. And as I filmed, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt documentation. When they finally drove off in separate cars, I sat in the rental, staring at my phone screen. It was all there, proof that could silence any courtroom dramatics. I exhaled, leaned back, and said to myself, "You just turned pain into evidence. Congratulations. You're officially your own private investigator." Back home, I called Tar. He picked up on the second ring, already chewing something. "You alive?" "Oh, I'm better than alive," I said. "I'm productive." He laughed. "That sounds dangerous. What did you do?" "I have footage," I said. "Video, timestamps, everything. It's like Discovery Channel for idiots in love." "No way. You followed her." "Of course," I said. "I'm not stalking. I'm collecting data for research." He whistled. "Man, I should have brought popcorn. Want me to edit it?" I grinned. "You read my mind. Add subtitles and maybe some dramatic music. Something classy like Another One Bites the Dust." "Got you," he said. "You want transitions or straight cuts?" "Trance," I said. "This betrayal deserves smooth fades." He cackled. "You're insane." "I love it." While Tar worked his editing magic, I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of whiskey. Not out of sadness, out of celebration. It's not every day you catch betrayal in 4K. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. Video file, corporate affairs, final cut.mpp4. TAR had delivered. I hit play. The opening sequence was cinematic, soft jazz, black and white filter, and a title card that said, based on poor decisions and cheaper wine. Then came the footage. Belinda and her boss laughing, touching the kiss. Dick even added dramatic slow motion at the perfect moments. It was art, petty art. Halfway through, I was laughing so hard I had to pause it. Milo looked at me confused like, "You okay, man?" "Oh, I'm fantastic," I told him. Netflix could never. By noon, I'd saved the video in 3 different folders, 2 drives, and 1 encrypted cloud. You don't collect gold and leave it unguarded. That afternoon, I went to see Mrs. Delgado again. She took one look at my smug face and said, "You found something better than something?" I said, handing her a flash drive. "I found cinema." She plugged it in, pressed play, and within 30 seconds, she was laughing. Actual laughter, the kind that echoes with disbelief and joy. "Oh, this is beautiful," she said. "Do I hear jazz? Classy, right?" "Very. The judge will love it." I grinned. "So, what's next now?" She said, "We add this to the file. Judges love evidence with timestamps. It screams competence." As she spoke, I realized something. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't angry. I was free. Watching her fall apart from a distance wasn't cruelty. It was closure in high definition. When I got home that evening, my phone buzzed again. "Belinda, can we talk tonight?" I stared at it, smirked, and replied, "Sorry, got a late meeting." No response, just silence, the sweet kind. I sat back on the couch, raised my drink, and toasted to the calm because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't reacting. I was orchestrating. Belinda thought she was the star of the show. But the truth was, she'd just been demoted to background noise. And I was finally the director. You ever see one of those crime documentaries where the detective lays out all the evidence on a big table and just stands there staring at it like the universe is whispering secrets through a thumb drive? Yeah, that was me. Except I wasn't solving a murder. I was documenting a slow-motion emotional homicide committed by my wife, Belinda. That night after I got home from Mrs. Delgado's office, I decided it was time for my own little crime scene exhibit. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, grabbed a stack of printed screenshots, receipts, and a highlighter, and got to work. The dining table that once held romantic dinners and anniversary candles now looked like the season finale of CSI Marriage Edition. The first folder was labeled Bank Activity, the financial affair. Oh, it was juicy. Late-night Uber rides to conference venues, Venmo payments to a user named J. Martin wine glass winking face and a $300 Sephora purchase 2 days before her team building retreat. Subtlety clearly wasn't her department. The next folder text messages, hundreds of them. Each one a little nugget of heartbreak and stupidity. "Belinda, you make spreadsheets sexy." Him, "I bet you're amazing at data entry." Winking faced. I actually laughed out loud. Data entry. That's your flirting game. God, you two deserve each other. Even Milo, who was sitting by my chair, tilted his head like he couldn't believe humans were this dumb. I took a deep breath and kept going. Email confirmations for hotel stays, restaurant bills, and one particularly damning invoice from the Ember Lounge, the same place where I'd filmed her corporate comedy hour with her boss. The timestamps lined up perfectly with my footage. Oh, it was beautiful. Even Mrs. Delgado would have cried tears of legal joy. I printed everything, every message, every transaction, every emoji that now made me want to throw my phone in the ocean. Then I laid them all out on the table piece by piece. The room was dead quiet except for the sound of paper sliding against wood. When I finally stepped back, I almost clapped. It was a masterpiece. My own personal evidence buffet. There were photos on the left, screenshots in the center, bank statements on the right, and at the top, my piece to resistance, the printed transcript of her voicemail confession from that fateful night. I had a one-night stand with my boss, and I'd do it again. Chef's kiss. I took a sip of whiskey, leaned on the counter, and admired my work like an artist at a gallery opening. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to Milo, "tonight's exhibit is titled How to Ruin a Marriage in 10 Easy Payments." Milo yawned. Typical critic. Then I opened my laptop and started organizing everything into a presentation folder. You know, something sleek. Because if I was going to dismantle her reputation in court, I wanted to do it with style. Mrs. Delgado always said, never underestimate the power of presentation. I created tabs, timeline of deception, financial misconduct, moral bankruptcy, and my personal favorite, texts that aged like milk. By midnight, I had a binder so thick it could double as a doorstop. I labeled it in big, bold letters. Exhibit Belinda, season finale. Every page told a story. Every screenshot whispered, "You really thought you could get away with this?" And the best part, I didn't need to say a word. The evidence screamed louder than I ever could. Even Milo seemed to feel the gravity of it all. He sniffed the binder once, sighed deeply, and gave me a look that said, "She really risked steak knife for this guy." "I know, buddy," I said, patting his head. "Some people just aren't built for loyalty or good taste." I sat back, watching the soft glow of the desk lamp cast long shadows across the papers. It almost looked poetic, revenge, but make it art. I thought about confronting her, about laying it all out, about the dramatic showdown people love to see in movies. But the more I pictured it, the less satisfying it seemed. Yelling wouldn't change the facts. Anger wouldn't give me closure. She'd just twist the story, play the victim, maybe even cry those crocodile tears she'd mastered years ago. No, I wanted quiet destruction. The kind where she woke up one morning and realized the Wi-Fi, the car, the credit cards, the comfort, all of it had vanished. And the only person she could blame was staring back at her in the mirror. So, I planned the reveal. Not with shouting, not with fireworks, just silence and paperwork. I made a checklist. 1. Deliver all evidence to Mrs. Delgado. 2. Lock personal accounts. 3. Transfer car ownership. 4. Remove her from insurance. 5. Leave envelope on her side of the bed. Each step brought me closer to closure. I wasn't just dismantling a marriage. I was reclaiming my peace, piece by piece. At one point, I paused to refill my drink and glanced at a framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Hawaii. We were smiling, bright, naive, so sure of forever. I picked it up, stared at it for a moment, then placed it face down on the table. That version of us didn't exist anymore. Around 1 a.m. I called Tar because, let's be honest, revenge hits different when you have an audience. He answered half asleep. "Bro, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Did you catch her again?" "Better," I said. I built a case. He yawned. "You mean like emotionally or legally?" "Both," I said proudly. "I have photos, receipts, text logs. My dining room looks like the FBI's work from home setup." That woke him up. "You serious?" "Dead serious. I've even got categories. My favorite one's called When Adultery Meets Accounting." He started laughing. "Man, you're not just moving on. You're writing a damn dissertation." "Exactly." I said, "This isn't heartbreak, it's research." "Send me pics," he said between laughs. "I want to see this crime scene of yours." I snapped a photo of the table, the neat rows of evidence glowing under the warm light, and sent it. A minute later, he texted back. "Bro, this belongs in a museum." "I know," I replied. "But the Museum of Karma doesn't open till Monday." We laughed until my stomach hurt. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter. Maybe that was the whiskey talking. Or maybe it was the power of finally being done. I stood there for a while staring at the binder, the papers, the proof. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about clarity, about seeing the truth without the fog of love and denial. For months, I'd been living in her version of reality, a place where lies were misunderstandings and guilt was stress. But not anymore. Now I had facts. Facts that didn't need permission to exist. Before heading to bed, I tucked the binder neatly into a briefcase and placed it by the door, ready for my morning meeting with Mrs. Delgado. The house was dark and still. The only sound was Milo's gentle snoring. I took one last look at the table, now empty again, and whispered, "That's it. Story collected. Exhibit complete." I turned off the light, heading upstairs. On the way, I passed the closed bedroom door. She was in there, sleeping peacefully, unaware that her world was about to implode. Part of me wanted to feel pity, but mostly I felt satisfaction. When I climbed into bed on the couch, my new preferred sleeping spot, I smiled. Tomorrow, she'd wake up to the sound of consequences knocking, and I'd be sitting there, coffee in hand, ready to watch the show. Morning arrived like a knockoff apology, bright, loud, and way too soon. I barely slept. Half because my couch has the personality of a cinder block, and half because I couldn't stop imagining the look on Belinda's face when she realized Karma was a morning person. I got up early, showered, shaved, and brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to dissolve regret. It was D-Day, Deliverance Day. Everything was in place. The binder labeled Exhibit Belinda Season Finale. The sealed envelope sitting prettily on the kitchen counter, and my breakfast plan. If revenge had a smell, it'd be maple syrup and poetic justice. I plated pancakes, 3 of them, perfectly circular, golden, heart-shaped, because symbolism is important. I even drizzled a little extra syrup in the shape of a question mark. Presentation matters when you're serving karma. At 7:42 a.m., I heard the bedroom door creak open. She emerged wearing one of my t-shirts again, acting like domestic bliss hadn't filed for bankruptcy. Her hair was messy, her eyes half closed. She mumbled, stretching. Something smells good. Oh, yeah, I said, flipping a pancake. Something does, she smiled, the same soft, manipulative smile that once could have convinced me the world was fine. Coffee on the table, I said. And something else, too. She patted toward the table, still half asleep, humming. She saw the plate of pancakes and the envelope beside it. And for a brief, glorious second, she probably thought I was being sweet. That maybe after everything she'd won, that maybe I'd forgiven her. The universe was about to clarify. She sat, tore open the envelope, and started reading. Inside was a single note typed neatly, professionally, with all the warmth of an HR memo. Congratulations, you've been promoted to single. P.S. The car's repossessed, rented due, and your boss can't expense heartbreak. Love always. Oh, she blinked once, twice, then she read it again. Her mouth fell open like a trapped. What the hell is this? She said, voice climbing octaves like a panicked violin. I poured coffee into my mug, calm as a Sunday sermon. It's your performance review, I said. You scored high in creativity, low in ethics. Her eyes darted around like the answers might be hiding in the cupboards. You did something, she hissed. Technically, I said. Mrs. Delgado did most of the heavy lifting. I just signed the paperwork. You're crazy, she snapped, clutching the note like it might bite her. No, I said, smiling. I'm organized. Her breathing quickened. What does this mean? What do you mean car's repossessed? Oh, I said casually, flipping another pancake. The lease was under my name. You'll have to Uber to your next late meeting. Her jaw clenched. You can't do that. Already did, I said, taking a bite of pancake. Turns out I'm remarkably efficient when I'm betrayed before breakfast. She stood up so fast the chair screeched across the tile. This is insane, Oliver. Is it? I asked, setting down my fork. Because when you confessed your affair, you sounded pretty confident about your decision-making skills. I'm just matching your energy. She threw the note on the table. You're punishing me. I shrugged. Squinces. It's not punishment, it's balance. Her eyes glistened, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen real tears from her before. This was performance art. I made a mistake, she whispered. Which part? I asked. The cheating or the confession? Her lips trembled. You don't understand. It just happened. Yeah, I said. Sipping coffee. So does food poisoning. That one landed. She blinked, speechless. I could practically see the gears turning, trying to find a way to twist this into a redemption arc. But the network had canceled her show. You're not even mad? She said finally, sounding confused, like she missed the script where I was supposed to beg or break down. Mad? I laughed. No, that implies I still care enough to raise my voice. I'm done. Finished. Out of emotional budget. She stared at me, shaking her head. You're a monster. Funny, I said. Coming from the woman who made out with her boss in a parking garage. Her nostrils flared. You followed me. Sure did, I said. You were hard to miss considering the fluorescent lighting and your boss's hairline acting as a spotlight. She gasped. You recorded us? I shrugged. Think of it as home security footage, just not for this home. Her hands balled into fists. You can't use that legally. I can't and I will. Morally, you forfeited that conversation at the Ember Lounge. She sat back down, clutching her head. I can't believe this. I know, I said. Self-awareness has never been your strong suit. The room went quiet except for the sound of Milo patting in, tail wagging like he could sense the drama. He sniffed the air, then sat beside me. Good boy, I said, scratching his ear. You want a pancake? Belinda glared. You're feeding the dog pancakes while we're having a serious conversation. Technically, I'm having breakfast, I said. You're having consequences. Her face went red. I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer. Oh, please do, I said cheerfully. Mrs. Delgado loves a challenge. She's already color-coded your downfall. She stormed toward the counter, grabbed her phone, and started furiously typing, probably texting Mr. Hairline and Heartache for sympathy. I walked over, leaned against the doorway, and said, by the way, your phone bill's due tomorrow. That's on you now, too. She froze. You cut me off completely, I said. Financial independence builds character. She spun around. Eyes wild. I have nowhere to go. Sure you do, I said. You've got a boss who seems very accommodating. The silence that followed was delicious. You could have buttered it and served it with brunch. She threw her phone onto the couch and screamed, "You humiliated me." I smiled. Not yet. I've been very discreet, but keep yelling. I'll upload the video to a private drive called Career Limiting Moves. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time in weeks, she looked small, human, maybe even scared, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little. I loved her once, deeply, but the woman standing in front of me wasn't the one I married. She'd traded vows for validation and integrity for instant gratification. So, no, I didn't feel guilty for letting her sit in the mess she made. I took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and said quietly, "You should start packing." She blinked. "You're kicking me out." "Consider it an early checkout," I said. "No refund, Oliver." "Belinda," I interrupted. "I wish you luck. Truly, but you don't get to burn down the house and act surprised when the smoke alarm goes off." She stood there shaking. "You'll regret this." I turned, leaning against the counter. "I already regretted marrying you. This part's just damage control." Her lip quivered. "You're cold." "I'm healed," I said simply. For a long, quiet moment, she just stared at me, maybe waiting for me to crack, but I didn't. I couldn't. I'd already grieved the marriage. This was the epilogue. Finally, she grabbed her bag, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle a frame on the wall. The house fell silent again. I exhaled long and steady. The tension that had lived in my shoulders for months finally loosened. Milo trotted over and rested his head on my leg, tail thumping softly. "It's just us now, buddy," I said, scratching his ears. "And look at that. We finally have peace and pancakes." I sat back down, poured another cup of coffee, and stared at the empty seat across from me. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned, like quiet was no longer the absence of noise, but the presence of sanity. The phone buzz. A text from Tar. Did she get the note? I smiled and typed back. She got the deluxe package. Screaming denial. Exit slam. 10 out of 10 performance. He replied with a laughing emoji. And damn, man. You're free. Free. The word looked good on the screen. I leaned back, watching the morning light spill across the kitchen. The same kitchen that had heard every fight, every fake apology, every lie. Today it felt new, lighter, like the house itself was relieved she was gone. I grabbed my phone again and opened my playlist. Song number 1, Don't Stop Me Now. Fitting. I turned up the volume until Milo's ears perked. Dancing in pajama pants at 8 a.m. wasn't on my bucket list, but freedom does strange things to a man. I sang along off-key, flipping pancakes with one hand and air guitaring with the spatula in the other. Halfway through the song, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. Messy hair, wrinkled t-shirt, ridiculous grin, and thought, yeah, this guy's going to be okay. Before heading out to meet Mrs. Delgado to file the final set of documents, I cleaned the kitchen, fed Milo, and tucked the envelope back into my drawer. A keepsake, not of her, but of the moment I took my life back. As I grabbed my keys, I noticed her mug still sitting on the counter, lipstick print and all. I considered throwing it out, then decided against it. No, let it stay. A reminder of what blind trust costs. I walked to the door, sunlight spilling across the floor. I took a deep breath, smiled, and whispered to myself, welcome to your new morning routine. Then I stepped outside, coffee in one hand, freedom in the other. If you've never been to divorce court, let me paint you a picture. It's like The Office meets Judge Judy. The same awkward silences, the same forced smiles, and absolutely no snacks. Everyone's pretending to be civilized while secretly calculating how many ways they can ruin each other before lunch. Walking in that morning, I felt oddly calm. Maybe it was the coffee. Maybe it was the relief that this circus was finally reaching its last act. Belinda, meanwhile, looked like she'd spent the night wrestling her conscience and lost. She was sitting 2 rows ahead, pretending to scroll through her phone like she wasn't fighting the urge to hurl it at me. Her lawyer sat beside her. Some guy named Derek with slick back hair and an ego so shiny it could have been used as a mirror. Mrs. Delgado, my legal gladiator, gave me a nod. Ready? She whispered. Born ready, I said. Let's turn heartbreak into case law. The bailiff called the session to order. The judge entered. A silver-haired woman with glasses perched halfway down her nose and a face that said she'd seen it all. If this woman's life were a movie, it would be called 50 Shades of Divorce. Case number 4823, Carver vs. Carver, the clerk announced. The judge glanced over her glasses at both of us. Let's make this quick. I skipped breakfast. Mrs. Delgado smiled faintly. Your Honor, we'll be as efficient as possible. Belinda's lawyer cleared his throat, instantly trying to charm. Your Honor, my client is simply seeking a fair division of marital assets. She contributed greatly to the household, and the judge raised a hand. Save the speech. I'll see the paperwork. Mrs. Delgado slid our neatly labeled folder across the bench. I swear the sound it made, paper gliding over wood, was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. Your Honor, she said, this is Exhibit Belinda season finale. Includes proof of infidelity, financial mismanagement, and enough text messages to crash a phone. The judge adjusted her glasses and flipped open the binder. Belinda shifted in her seat. Her lawyer tried to keep his poker face, but I could tell by the twitch in his jaw he hadn't been briefed on all the evidence. Page 1, screenshots of texts between Belinda and her boss. Page 2, hotel receipts. Page 3, the video. Yes, the one edited with jazz music and tasteful fade-outs. When the video started playing on the courtroom monitor, you could have heard a pin drop. There they were. Belinda and Mr. Hairline in glorious 1080p. Mrs. Delgado had even added subtitles for clarity. Belinda, you make spreadsheets sexy. Boss, only for you, baby. The courtroom collectively exhaled a scandalized oof. Even the judge's eyebrows lifted, and I swear one juror in the back whispered, yikes. Belinda's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, this is highly inappropriate. The judge waved him off. Oh, hush. It's evidence and oddly cinematic. Mrs. Delgado smiled sweetly. My IT consultant added the transitions, Your Honor. Very professional, the judge said dryly. Continue. The footage ended with Belinda's boss wiping lipstick off his chin. When the screen went dark, the silence was thicker than courtroom coffee. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Carver, is this you texting? You make spreadsheets sexy. Belinda froze. Her lawyer opened his mouth, but she beat him to it. I can explain. No need, the judge said, closing the folder. I've been married 3 times. I know that look. A few snickers rippled through the courtroom. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was doing cartwheels. Mrs. Delgado stood. Your Honor, in light of this overwhelming evidence, we request that my client retain full ownership of the marital property and all financial accounts. Mrs. Carver's actions demonstrate clear breach of marital trust and misuse of shared funds. Belinda's lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, we contend that Mr. Carver's behavior since the incident. Specifically, his vindictive tone has caused undue emotional distress to my client. The judge looked at him like he'd just asked her to babysit on a Friday night. Emotional distress? She said, Sir, your client was doing the electric slide with her boss in a hotel bar. I'd call that cardio, not distress. Even the bailiff chuckled. Mrs. Delgado smirked. We rest our case. Belinda shot me a glare sharp enough to slice marble. I just smiled politely like a man watching karma finish dessert. The judge shuffled through some papers, made a few notes, then looked at both of us. Here's what's going to happen. Mr. Carver retains ownership of the house, vehicle, and all joint accounts. Mrs. Carver forfeits claim due to breach of fiduciary and marital trust. Belinda gasped. That's not fair. The judge shrugged. Neither was your extracurricular activity. Next case. Bang. Gavel down. It was the sound of freedom. I exhaled. The kind of deep exhale that feels like you're letting go of a ghost. Mrs. Delgado turned to me, her grin subtle but victorious. Congratulations, Mr. Carver, she whispered. You're officially a free man. And for what it's worth, you handled that beautifully. Thanks, I said. I owe you coffee and maybe a commemorative trophy. She laughed. Buy me a latte and we'll call it even. Belinda stormed out of the courtroom before I could say anything. Heels clacking against the tile like punctuation marks of defeat. I waited until she disappeared around the corner before letting out a long satisfied sigh. Outside, the air felt fresher, lighter. Divorce shouldn't feel like a victory, but damn, it tasted like one. I called Tar. Bro, he said, tell me the judge loved the video. She did, I said. She called it cinematic. Tar hooped. So loud people turned to stare. I'm adding that to my resume. Editor of legally admissible heartbreak content. Put it under special skills. I said, so you're free now? Free and well documented. Man, you got to celebrate drinks tonight. Absolutely, I said. I'm buying with my own card this time. We met later at a rooftop bar, the kind of place with overpriced cocktails and string lights designed to make regret look romantic. Tar raised his glass to new beginnings. I clinked mine against his and better endings. We laughed for the first time in months. It wasn't bitter. It was pure stupid joy. Halfway through the night, my phone buzzed. A message from Belinda. You ruined me. I stared at it for a second, then typed back. No, you did that yourself. I just submitted the paperwork. Send. I turned my phone face down and kept drinking. He leaned over. Was that her? Yep. What did she say? Nothing new. Just confirming she's still allergic to accountability. He snorted beer through his nose. You're savage. I'm honest. I said there's a difference. Later that night, I walked home alone. City lights bouncing off the pavement. The kind of quiet hum that only exists when something heavy finally lifts off your shoulders. I passed a bakery that used to be our Saturday morning spot. The smell hit me. Warm bread, sugar, nostalgia. But this time it didn't hurt. It just was. I stopped outside, watched a couple laughing inside, and smiled. Not the bitter kind, the real kind. Because despite everything, I'd survived it. Back home, I changed into sweats, grabbed Milo's leash, and took him for a late night walk. He sniffed every bush like it owed him money, tail wagging like life was simple. Maybe he was onto something. Buddy, I said, we did it. Court's over. Freedom reinstated. He barked once approvingly. When we got back, I poured myself one last drink, sat on the couch, and turned on some background jazz, the same kind T had used in the video. Fitting soundtrack for the credits. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment the judge said the words, Mr. Carver retains ownership. That phrase was going to live rentree in my head forever, unlike Belinda. I raised my glass in a mock toast to the empty room. Here's to honesty, loyalty, and knowing when to lawyer up. Milo jumped on the couch beside me, resting his head on my leg. I ruffled his fur. We're going to be fine, kid. Turns out justice has good taste. Before turning in for the night, I texted Mrs. Delgado one last time. Thank you for everything. You made the process painless. She replied within minutes. It's never painless, Mr. Carver, but it's always worth it. I smiled, shut off my phone, and sat there in the quiet. For once, it wasn't the lonely kind of quiet. It was peaceful. Divorce court wasn't supposed to be funny. But that day, it had been a comedy. The kind where the villain trips over her own script, the audience applauds, and the protagonist walks off into the sunset holding a stack of legally binding happiness. When I finally crawled into bed, I didn't dream about her. I dreamed about pancakes, passports, and possibilities because tomorrow wasn't a continuation of the past. It was the pilot episode of something entirely new. A month after the courtroom grand finale, peace had finally become my favorite background noise. No drama, no emotional invoices, just me, Milo, and the occasional Netflix binge that didn't involve marital infidelity. Life was smooth until Belinda's sister, Lydia, sent me an invite that read, family gathering. Be civil. It's her birthday. I should have ignored it. But curiosity and pettiness are cousins. And I happen to be close with both. So there I was, walking into Lydia's overly decorated suburban living room. Balloons everywhere, fake laughter bouncing off the walls, and the guest of dishonor standing in the middle, clutching a wine glass like she'd earned it. Belinda froze when she saw me. The air went tight enough to file taxes on. Oliver, she said, forcing a smile. Didn't think you'd show. Oh, I wouldn't miss this, I said. I brought a gift, too. Her mom tried to play peacemaker. Let's all be adults tonight. Absolutely, I said. Adults love transparency. People started whispering. Lydia's husband whispered, this will be good. I pretended not to hear. Belinda, meanwhile, was doing that nervous laugh thing like if she laughed hard enough, she could make reality leave the room. What gift could you possibly have for me? She asked. I held up my phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker, and smiled. Audio memories. The first few seconds were harmless. Ambient noise, clinking glasses. Then her voice came on, clear as crystal. You taste better than my husband's cooking. Boom. Instant silence. Someone dropped a fork. Her mom gasped like she'd just witnessed a ghost. Her boss's wife, yes, the boss's wife, was standing right there, frozen mid-sip. You could feel the shock ripple through the room like an electrical surge. Turn that off. Belinda screamed, lunging toward me, but I stepped back calm as a yoga instructor. Oh, come on, I said. You said it publicly. I'm just helping you own it. Her boss's wife threw her wine in her husband's face. The guy choked, sputtered, and yelled. It wasn't what it sounded like, which made everyone laugh because, well, it sounded exactly like what it was. Belinda's mother fainted into the cake. Lydia yelled, "Not on the buttercream," because priorities. The whole place erupted in chaos, screaming, crying, arguing, and I just stood there sipping my soda like it was a fine vintage. I leaned toward the nearest waiter and said, "Add that to my bill, please. Entertainment fee." Then I turned, smiled at the mess I didn't have to clean up anymore, and walked out. Outside, the night air felt good, light, free, earned. I slid into my car, rolled down the window, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Belinda." Some gifts just keep giving. It's funny how quiet can sound different after a storm. For months, silence used to feel heavy, like waiting for a fight to start. Now, it's peace with good acoustics. The only thing breaking at most mornings is Milo's tail thumping against the floor, demanding breakfast like rents due. My new routine's simple. Wake up, stretch, make coffee, and not think about Belinda. The coffee part's easy. The last one's a little trickier. Every now and then, I'll pass her old mug in the cabinet. The one that says "Boss Lady." I don't throw it away. It reminds me to never ignore red flags just because they're printed on ceramic. People keep asking, "Do you regret it? The marriage? The whole messy ending?" I tell them the truth. Sure. I regret the years I spent giving CPR to something that was already dead. But the ending? No. Best plot twist of my life. I still talk to Mrs. Delgado sometimes. She calls occasionally just to check if I'm emotionally solvent. Her words, not mine. Tar, on the other hand, won't shut up about turning my story into a podcast. Heartbreak and Hard Drives, his working title. I told him to wait until the restraining order's hypothetical works better, too. Turns out when you remove daily chaos from your life, productivity skyrockets. Who knew? I've even started jogging again. Not for fitness. Just to prove to myself I can run away from something without emotional baggage this time. Belinda, last I heard, she's finding herself. Translation, jobless, carless, and probably allergic to accountability. Her boss got demoted after the birthday fiasco went viral. Thank you, Internet. Actions have consequences, and apparently Yelp reviews. The best part of my mornings now is the small stuff. My pancakes don't burn. My Wi-Fi connects instantly. My peace of mind has a password only I know. Sometimes I'll look at Milo and say, "Buddy, you're the only one I'd share my passwords with." And he just blinks like, "Damn right." There's something liberating about rebuilding your life without needing permission. I used to think revenge was the reward, but it isn't. Pieces. Revenge just makes the story entertaining. Peace gives it a happy ending. Every weekend I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and a sense of humor sharp enough to cut through nostalgia. Sometimes I even laugh, remembering her line, "I do it again." And yeah, I believe her, but I'd do it again, too. The part where I walked away because now the only thing I wake up next to is my own damn sanity and it doesn't lie, cheat, or need Wi-Fi to feel loved.